Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video.
Both Grangers were nervously awaiting Sirius's arrival. Neither could content themselves until they'd heard from Hogwarts. It was Sunday dinner time, but there was no appetite for food in their Crawley home. It was information Emma and Dan hungered for. A pop from the back garden signaled an end to their waiting but cranked up the nervous tension in the house by about a factor of 10. Emma was holding the door open, her first question being asked before Sirius even got a chance to enter the house. "What did they say? Have you got a letter?" "I have no idea what they said, nor have I got a letter." "We will need your memory player though." Dan raced at once to get it, and then for the first time in a couple of weeks, his daughter spoke to him. "Hi Mum, hi Dad, this is not something we wanted to put in a letter, so Harry came up with this idea. I'm currently staring into a beautiful pair of green eyes and talking to you, strange or what? Then again, two dentists having a witch for a daughter is about as strange as you can get. With our family there just is no definition of normal, something that got forgotten by all of us." Emma already had a hanky out and Dan appeared close to tears too. Hermione and Harry had recorded this message last night, so this was the first time Sirius was seeing it as well. "A few weeks ago a couple of incidents happened that have resulted in me standing here talking to you like this. In all honesty, I don't think any of us handled the situation too well. My father was simply desperate to protect me. He just panicked and made the wrong choice. I can see that now. Before I was so focused on the hurt Harry must be feeling, I was simply blinkered to what was happening in my own home. Dad, for not explaining things and especially for hitting you with my practice sword. I'm really sorry. I am ashamed of myself and hope you can forgive me. I have of course forgiven you." Dan now needed a tissue from the box. "Harry and I blood bonding seems to have caused most of the trouble. Mum, Dad, I don't know what you've been told, but Harry and I have had time to talk about it now. Here's what this bond means to us. Harry is my boyfriend, a boyfriend that will one day become my husband. The bond was our magic confirming that we could search the entire country and not find anyone more suitable, something we both were already coming to understand. We would only be legally married in the eyes of the nation if we confirmed the bond, not something Harry and I have any intention of doing for the foreseeable future." Shit. Talk about strange. I'm standing here with my boyfriend, talking about sex so my parents can watch his memory of this conversation. Told you normal doesn't apply to us anymore. Where was I, Harry? I knew I should have written this down. They saw Harry's hands stretch out and caress her cheek. The look of love their daughter gave him in return took Dan and Emma's breath away. Now, while not officially married, Harry and I are still considered family under the laws of his nation. This is something we're both very happy about and hope the rest of our family will support. We don't want to be apart, but aren't even considering living together like a married couple, not until at least 7th year, and I officially change my name. We're hoping the model that was used at the start of the summer can be our new normal. Since the 3 people watching this were all being included in their future plans, none of them had any objections to this. After all, it had originally been them who suggested it. Harry already has a room at my home, I have a room at his, and we both have rooms at Grimmauld. With us being at Hogwarts for most of the year, a mix of Muggle, magical and Goblin during any holidays has been a perfect fit for us so far. Neither Harry nor I want to choose one over the other two. For that to work though, we need our family. All our family. Mum, Dad, Barchoke and yes, you too, Sirius. Sirius now understood them using this method. Watching this was far more powerful than any letter. He also had a sphere in his pocket from Harry for his father. He was beginning to think these two might actually pull this off. After listening to the next part, Sirius was now sure they would. Now these messages are really just to begin mending fences. What we really need is for our family to get together and talk. Here's what we're suggesting. Padma and Neville are coming with us to visit Harry's parents on Halloween. Harry would like to introduce his whole family to his mum and dad. Sirius, could you tell Henrika and Remus they're invited too? The 4 of us are then going to visit Neville's parents, and Augusta has already invited us to spend the weekend with her. What happens after that is really up to you." Hermione's eyes were now filling with tears as she tried not to think of what could happen if their family fractured. "Dad, you said fathers had dreams for their daughters. Well, those daughters have dreams too, and I'm looking right at mine. You leading me up that aisle to awaiting Harry would be a dream come true for all of us. A dream worth fighting for." Dan was almost raising his arms as his daughter rushed towards them. It was different arms, though, that wrapped around the now crying young witch. The image was suddenly full of Hermione's hair as they heard her last words on the matter. "I don't know what else I can say, Harry." They also heard more than saw a gentle kiss on Hermione's neck. "You said everything that needed to be said, Hermione." The memory faded, leaving both Grangers needing a couple of moments to get themselves together. "After dragging Hermione away from him, he still wants to introduce me to his parents." Dan was having trouble believing he had been forgiven so easily. Sirius was actually shaking his head in admiration. "Those two are clever in their own right, but together they're simply brilliant. We all got a glimpse of what each is like when kept apart. That's not something I'm in a hurry to see again." Both Grangers added their heartfelt agreement to Sirius's words. Their daughter had merely functioned without Harry by her side. Seeing that sparkle of life back in her eyes got Hermione's message across, like no letter ever could. Emma was drying her eyes, but this time it was tears of joy. "We're going to get to see them at Halloween, and Barchoke too." This sobered Dan's euphoria. "Shit. Sirius, how do you apologize to a goblin? Getting their son and daughter to pave the way for you will be a massive help. I have a memory message for him too. If anyone would know how to turn that goblin around, it would be Harry. I think that's why Hermione emphasized our family so often. Harry will probably be taking the same line with his father. Barchoke knows that's the one thing his son wants. The one thing that he can't give him." He also couldn't miss the way those two boys looked to Emma all summer. Harry doesn't have a mother figure in his life. It doesn't take any stretch of imagination to see who he was promoting into that role. A role Emma here seemed more than happy to accept. Emma couldn't help but smile at Sirius's last comment. "From the moment I met your godson, my maternal instincts just seemed to kick into overdrive. There is just something about Harry that has both Granger females wanting to hug him and never let go. Knowing that he's going to officially become my son one day is the reason for these tears. I hugged and kissed both of them before chasing them onto the train. It just felt so right." Both parents would watch that memory multiple times, but Dan had already memorized the important parts. "Hermione is really only happy now when Harry's around, and I don't think Emma or I would have any problems supporting the two of them staying together, the way she suggested at one of the 3 places mentioned. Had I known that's how this bond would affect them, I wouldn't have made such an ass of myself. Next time, I'll get Hermione to cast that locking legs thing, and Emma can sit on me until I listen. Seeing them marry at 17 is fine with me. It was doing it at 12 I couldn't handle." Sirius could practically feel the energy flow back into this couple. He certainly hadn't enjoyed explaining the facts of life that govern Muggle parents with a magical offspring to them. He still remembered Lily's reactions to learning that her parents' wishes counted for nothing in the magical world. Muggles were expected to put their children onto a train and basically then forget about them. That might have worked centuries ago, but it was something else now badly needing changed in their community. He had to decline the dinner invitation. Sirius would need to visit Gringotts with Harry's message to his father. Last week he would have thought getting their family back together anytime soon wasn't even remotely possible. He was learning, though, that when Harry and Hermione were involved, anything was possible. Their timetable this year saw them begin their week with potions. Master Pitsley also started off Wednesday too, with defense classes on a Tuesday and Friday. That left Thursday as the only day on the 4 second year's timetable that didn't have a goblin flavor to it, though Henrika was still in the castle if they needed her. While expecting Master Pitsley, Sirius's arrival with their potions tutor had a certain young couple really worried. That was until they saw his wide smile. And here was me thinking, you two would be pleased to see me. Hermione, your mum and dad loved their little present. They will see you both soon. Harry, as you said, your father wanted to watch his message in private. You wouldn't have understood a word of it anyway, Sirius. What brings you to the castle today? Oh, I need to make sure a certain history professor now keeps that weekend free, and to stare darkly at that fool Lockhart. Henrika will fry his ass if he makes a move on her, though I would expect my godson to get a few blows in there too. I also knew you two would be waiting on news of how yesterday went, so I just rolled all those tasks up into one big bundle, and here I am. I also wanted to say your idea was marauder-worthy, bloody brilliant. Need to go and catch Henrika before class. See you both on Saturday. They may have headed for different destinations, but Hermione, Harry and Sirius all had a definite spring in their step, especially for a Monday morning. The four had hung back in defense, wanting a quick word with Bill about the lesson they would give to the first years after dinner. When the group of five eventually left the classroom, they could all hear the faint, plaintive cry for help. Recognizing the voice, Bill shot off down the corridor with the other four hot on his heels. Bursting into Lockhart's classroom, a scene of utter devastation greeted them. Ron was hanging from the iron chandelier, dangling a good 10 feet off the ground. A group of Cornish pixies were meanwhile having a whale of a time, destroying everything they could get their hands on. A wave of Bill's wand and the creatures were immobilized. It was now answers he wanted. Ron, what the hell is going on here? The pixies grabbed me by the ears and hung me up here. Bill thought his brother had a tedious tendency to state the blindingly obvious, so asked again, where is Professor Lockhart? When the pixies took his wand and chucked it out the window, he ran away while shouting for us to deal with it. The Slytherins were at the back of the class while I was sitting down the front. They made it out almost as quickly as Lockhart. The pixies were on me before I could get to the door. Fighting with his temper at this so-called professor's incompetence, Bill asked one final question. Surely he must have given you some instructions. The chandelier was still slowly swinging, taking its thoughtful passenger along with it as Ron harked back to what Lockhart had said. We were warned not to scream, in case it provoked them. Lockhart then let the little buggers out their cage. All he said was, let's see what you make of them. When we all dived for cover, he tried to use a spell that sounded as if Fred and George had made it up. It didn't work any better than the rat color-changing one they gave me. After the pixies got his wand, they started pulling his hair. He ran out of here screaming like a girl. Bill, can you get me down now? A levitation charm soon had Ron free, and both his feet back on the ground. Thanks, Bill. Lockhart would have left me up there all night. Those Slytherins will have that story all over the castle by now. Everyone will be laughing at me again. Help came from an unexpected source, though. Helping a fellow Gryffindor just seemed the right thing to do. Just turn it back on them, Ron. Say you had the best view for watching Lockhart get beaten up by those pixies, and heard him scream like a little girl. Ron's mind was quickly converting that idea to something where he deliberately let the pixies do that to him so he could watch, while the cowardly Slytherins ran away. Thanks, Neville. That's a great idea. I did have the best view too. And now Happy Ron raced away to tell his version of the story. It was also dinner time. Bill was making for the door that led to the defense professor's office when 4 students jumped in front of him. Professor Weasley, this is not the way. Her boyfriend soon offered his backing. While I would love to see you wipe the floor with Lockhart, Hermione's right. Dumbledore would use that to stop you teaching us, and there's no way we want that thing for our defense professor. Padma just had to add her 2 knots worth. You can't beat him up, not without first giving us a chance to sell tickets. We could make a fortune just from the other professors. Professor Sprout wanted signed photos of Harry to hang in all her greenhouses. Lockhart was telling her how to do her job until we turned up for class. He took one look at Harry and practically ran away, shouting some excuse over his shoulder. Neville couldn't help but smile as he described that event. The enraged redhead was presented with another option by Harry. You are now an assistant ambassador to the nation. There are other ways to get revenge. Pointing Fred and George at the Pratt would certainly be where I would start. This saw a smile creep onto Bill's features. I suppose it is a matter of Weasley family honor. Giving the terrible twosome first crack certainly wouldn't do any harm. This was greeted with mock horror from Padma. Oh no, they'll want a share of the ticket money. The smile on their tutor's face was now predatory. "You're probably right, but they will make sure any audience gets their money's worth, as long as they save me a seat." The pictures on the wall were all empty, leaving the group to suppose that the images displayed the same amount of courage as the subject. None. Like the Pied Piper, Harry led the group of first years up to the 7th floor. Henrika was waiting on them, shaking her head as Hogwarts opened its special door. "No matter how many times I see you do that, it still amazes me almost as much as the rooms we find behind it." The first years appeared pretty amazed too. They were still agog when Henrika got things started. "Okay, everyone, gather round and listen carefully. I may be sponsoring this club, but we all know it will be these four who will really be teaching you. I just want to set the ground rules before we start. Firstly, you will be getting taught defense in here. That means you have to obey your instructors at all times. As this class progresses, some of the things you will be getting taught could be very dangerous otherwise." Henrika paused a moment to ensure that everyone understood that point before continuing. All those eager little faces staring back at her just reminded the Vila why she loved teaching. Secondly, anything you learn in this room will never be used on another student outside of these four walls. Anyone found breaking these rules will no longer be allowed to attend. Breaking that second one will probably see you in trouble with Hogwarts too. Everyone understand the rules? A chorus of "Yes, Professor" saw Henrika hand them over to the four who would be tutoring them. She stood back and watched the quartet go to work. They quickly had the large group split into two, with each couple then taking their particular charges to the appropriate side of the room. She couldn't help but notice that each group was a pretty even mixture of sexes, and all four houses. It appeared a very deliberate attempt to promote integration. She noticed Padma had taken the lead with their group, though Neville was right beside her and demonstrating exactly the points she was making. Henrika had also noticed these two had become much closer over the summer. Parts of their holiday in Tokyo was overwhelming for all of them. Henrika didn't think she was the only one who noticed these two would automatically reach for the other to draw comfort and reassurance. Padma and Neville were taking on the task of teaching their group a spell, and then working with them to get the first years to cast it accurately. The room had created half a dozen shooting booths for this very purpose. Neville drew his wand and fired off the spell they would be learning. A colored blob smacked straight into the target's center. This earned him a round of applause, a joking kiss on the cheek from Padma, plus a chocolate frog from the box they'd brought as a reward for marksmanship. Colin, asking if they got both rewards for hitting a bullseye or if they could choose, drew a laugh from Padma as the first 6 were moved into position to attempt the spell. Henrika couldn't help but admire the thinking behind this. It didn't matter how powerful a curse you could cast if it missed what you were aiming at. Teaching accuracy right from the off would stand them in good stead for the rest of their time in Hogwarts. Harry and Hermione were organizing their group to practice the other side of the coin, evasion. Their part of the room had a terrain littered with boulders, broken pieces of wall and tree stumps, all perfect for little bodies to hide behind. As first years, they wouldn't be able to fight back or shield themselves for a while yet. Teaching them to get away from trouble was also something Henrika agreed with. They were using 2 training dummies, set to fire the blob spell the other group was using. Since the blob disappeared in under 5 minutes, it would let them know who was tagged without leaving any permanent marks on their clothes. The dummies would wander around, firing the spell at the hiding first years. Again they entered the course 6 at a time, with last person to be caught winning a chocolate frog. The first years, not shooting or hiding, were all busy calling encouragement or even warnings to those who were. As a teacher, Henrika could easily see that these 4 had put a lot of thought into this. She could detect Bill's input to their lesson plan too. The mere fact they had one put them miles ahead of Lockhart from the very beginning, that they had engaged their students, focused their attention on the task in hand, and then even made it fun, put them on a different planet from that faker. Just watching their friends take part was also educational. Luna's tactic of keeping on the move and using all the cover the room provided was soon being universally adopted. It made more sense than the first winner's method, simply hiding behind something and hoping you were last to be hit. The cheering from the shooting booth was also becoming more frequent as their stock of chocolate frogs began to take a pounding. She knew they had discussed swapping the groups over. Halfway through the lesson, all four had listened to her opinion on the matter. Tonight was their first lesson, so it was important not to push too much information at them. It also meant that those present knew exactly what was in store for them next week, and Henrika was sure their students would be looking forward to it. By now, every group of 6 had at least 4 attempts at their activity. With the final rotations finishing off, it was time to sum things up. Henrika had an idea how to end the lesson on a real high. Right, first year, you all did very well tonight. Next week we'll see you swap activities. This drew some excited cheering. Now, would you like to see a small demonstration of why these skills are so important? This drew shouts of yes from every single student. Harry had his shade on his arm and was moving into the center of the area they'd been using to teach the first year. Hermione, Padma, and Neville drew their wands and took up positions around the area. Kicking off his shoes, Harry decided to give them a show. He also knew he would need the enhanced speed his armor offered if he was to avoid these 3 firing spells at him. Henrika shouted, "Begin!" and some of the first years forgot to breathe. What they were watching, though, was pretty breathtaking. Harry was moving like lightning. He needed to, though. The other 3 were all moving too, not allowing him to stay in cover for more than a few seconds. They continually attempted to trap him, but Harry always seemed to be able to wriggle away. When Henrika called time, his shield was a mass of blobs, but none had hit their intended target. There was an explosion of loud cheering for all 4 of their now smiling tutors. If there was a better way to end a first lesson than that, Henrika had yet to find it. Right, everyone, 20 minutes to curfew, so don't dawdle on the way back to your houses. Will we see you next week? This was greeted by loud cries of yes from every single first year. They were then approached by a delegation of Luna, Ginny, and Colin. The 3 clearly spoke for the rest of their yearmates. The little blonde went first. "We would like to thank you for doing this. We know you didn't really have to. We wanted to name our group so everyone would know how pleased we were to be here." Ginny was battling her blushing as she said the next bit. "We looked up the name for a group of crows but didn't really want to be called crows murderers, so we were stuck." Colin barely let Ginny finish before jumping in with his bit. "Then yesterday, Luna heard Sirius use a word that seemed to fit perfectly. We would like to call ourselves crows marauders." Henrika couldn't hold her laughter at Colin's suggestion. "Oh, Sirius. And Remus are just going to love that. Brilliant." Ginny then lost her battle with blushing as she removed something from her pocket. "Dean Thomas heard Colin and I talking about it. He drew this for us. I thought it was good and was wondering if we could get badges made, or something." Harry, taking the parchment from Ginny, saw her courage fail as she melted back into her friends. The drawing was very good, depicting a crow perched on the crossguard of a sword that bore more than a passing familiarity to the one at his waist. "Wow, Ginny, this is really good. I'll look into the club badges thing, if that's what everyone wants." Harry was quickly reassured that's exactly what they wanted. They were filing out the door as Henrika was congratulating them on a very successful lesson. They found Fred and George waiting on them. "This looks like a conversation a professor shouldn't hear. I'll see you 4 tomorrow." They walked in the direction of Gryffindor Tower to drop Neville off and listen to what the twins wanted. "Guys, we need to talk to you about our prank deal. We've devised a way to humiliate that useless ass Lockhart, but it might break our deal." After hearing what the twins had planned, all 4 were in agreement that they would take their chances. The plan was just too good to pass up. Irgit delivered a letter to Harry next morning. Hermione was absently sharing her bacon between both familiars, while watching Harry, concerned as her boyfriend's brows furrowed at the letter he was reading. She couldn't hold herself any longer and just had to ask. "Bad news?" Harry turned to see Hermione biting her lip. He thought it was so cute. "Yeah, it would appear we've stabbed ourselves in the foot." With his girlfriend staring intently, he continued. "With a new history course and Professor Snape gone and Assistant Ambassador Weasley pushing up the defense. OKWL and Nenny Bidder with a T scores. Hogwarts has never had it so good. That hardly generates momentum to get rid of its headmaster. Father says most appear to be keeping a close eye on the castle and adopting a wait-and-see policy, not what we wanted. But at least the old wizard is now being watched. One more incident like last year and he'll be out the door. Both Hermione and Padma shivered at the very thought of another troll, since they were also both aware of Dobby's warning. Hermione then asked about the news she really wanted to know about. "Did your father say anything else about your message?" "Oh, he's taking the points I raised under advisement." Hermione was now stroking Moonlight with one hand while smoothing Urgit's feathers with the other. Both familiars seemed delighted at this arrangement, but Harry could see the worry on her face. He reached out and gently stroked her cheek. "Hermione, my father's a goblin. Under advisement to him means he'll now be looking back at that night from every perspective. That was really all we asked for, all we could hope for." This drew a smile from her. "I can't wait to read Henrika's book. I'll get my mum and dad a copy too." They didn't get to say any more as Master Pitsley had arrived. It was time for potions. Urgit flew off, but Moonlight had another target. The little blonde was always good for a belly rub, and perhaps a little more bacon. The twins had confirmed after potions that they had put their plan into operation. Even those two, though, were surprised at the speed the next phase was achieved. McGonagall stood that very lunchtime and announced those plans to the school. "Some facts were brought to my attention earlier, and an idea that's just short of genius. George and Fred Weasley, 50 points to Gryffindor, each." This resulted in loud cheering from the Lions, and disbelieving glances from the other three houses. Now, before I get accused of bias, let me tell you the rest. The exact date of Merlin's birthday is unknown. The best it can be tied down to is the last week of September. There are supposedly very few living holders of the Order of Merlin, 3 of whom are sitting having lunch with us today. After pointing out these facts, the Weasley twins then suggested we hold a ball in Merlin's honor on Saturday, the 26th of September. This was greeted by loads of excitement from the hall. Harry knew this was his part. Minerva spotted the boy standing and thought she might have overstepped the mark. She really should have spoke to Harry first. She didn't give Dumbledore a second glance. "Something wrong, Centurion?" "No, Professor. I think the ball is a great idea. I just wanted to mention the fact that if we are recognizing the 26th as Merlin's birthday, tradition dictates I must wear my award on that day. I wouldn't want people to get the wrong idea." "Understandable, Centurion Crow. Perhaps Professor Hobson could cover some of the protocols involved in her history of magic lessons." Henrika quickly agreed, saying she would need a few days to check the appropriate texts. Albus saw the obvious trap, but since he wasn't the intended prey, the headmaster decided to play along. He was hanging on to Hogwarts by his fingertips. Here was a chance at some positive publicity. Anything that would see his name linked in a good light with Harry was something Albus couldn't really resist. It was with some trepidation. Albus stood. He didn't know if this would empty the hall again. Like Centurion Crow, I also think this ball is a good idea. I hope you don't think I'm being presumptuous either when I also have to wear my Order of Merlin. Albus then had an announcement to boost his own popularity. Well, it really couldn't be much lower at the moment. To help prepare for this unexpected ball, I think an extra Hogsmeade weekend is in order. The 19th and 20th should do. After the excitement this caused, Albus wisely decided to quit while he was ahead and sat back down. Minerva thought that an extra Hogsmeade visit was a good idea, but now she had the bad news to deliver. When Hogwarts has held balls in the past, they have been restricted, with 4th year being the youngest students allowed to attend. Obviously, we're going to have some second years at this event. These restrictions are purely due to the size of the Great Hall. Harry had quickly consulted Helena, the looks of disappointment from those at the Ravenclaw table who wouldn't be eligible to attend, forcing him to take action. "Professor McGonagall, if that's the only thing denying everyone attending, what if we could solve the accommodation problem?" Catching on at once what Harry was alluding to, Minerva only needed confirmation this was actually possible. "Can Hogwarts manage that, Centurion?" "Easily, Professor. When Hermione and I use it in the winter for our morning training, it provides us with a room containing a running track that is at least 3 times the size of the Great Hall. The Patel twins' birthday party proved the elves have no problem finding it. Hogwarts will provide the facilities to accommodate the entire school. In that case, everyone's invited. McGonagall's announcement saw a cheer reverberate around the hall. Only Lockhart didn't look excited by this. He actually appeared horrified. The second years had history of magic next. Harry kept chuckling all the way to Henrika's class. The only downside to this was he would again be a guest of honor and have to sit with the other holders of the award. This was why Fred and George had warned him, but Harry thought it was well worth the risk. Even if they were wrong, and Lockhart turned up wearing his supposed Order of Merlin, Harry would simply spend most of the evening on the dance floor with Hermione. Hardly a hardship. It was Morrig who finally asked him what was going on. Harry's answer set them all thinking. My award was put in its box after the ball. Dumbledore's is probably framed on his wall somewhere. Do you honestly think, if Lockhart actually had an Order of Merlin, he wouldn't be walking about with it pinned to his frilly robes? Every book of his has the Gitz picture all over it, yet not one features him wearing his most prestigious award. Same with his stories, full of his deeds, yet nowhere does it mention what he did to receive this award. He could see everyone was now listening, even Malfoy and his cronies were paying attention. Harry then delivered the final blow. The man just released an autobiography, Magical Me. It should probably have been called Mysterious Me. He still didn't say how he got an Order of Merlin. Draco had been avoiding any kind of conflict but felt he was safe enough just asking a question. Are you saying Lockhart lied about his Order of Merlin? If you're asking for my opinion, then yes. Everyone will soon know if he turns up without it. The Prophet is sure to get hold of this story and want pictures. The Prat actually shoved Hermione away for a chance to get a picture with me. Do you think he'll want to miss getting his picture taken as one of the 3 Order of Merlin winners at Hogwarts? Pansy now thought it safe to follow Draco's example. She certainly had no love for Lockhart, but this seemed a tad excessive. So all this is just a plot to embarrass Lockhart? They were nearly at Henrika's classroom, but Harry answered anyway. Embarrass? No. Prove he's a liar? Yes. If he's lied about that, how many of his other claims are true? Morrig felt the Slytherins had muscled in on her questions. They may have asked good questions, but she felt there was something still missing. Can't he just buy one, and won't there be records? Susan actually answered this. An Order of Merlin is not just a piece of metal, it's heavily charmed to bind with the person it's awarded to. We could all touch Harry's award at the ball, but none of us could ever wear it. The magic involved simply wouldn't allow it. As to records, a big enough bribe to the right person could make those records say whatever you wanted. Padma had a different theory. I think it might be another case like Bin's. Someone says something often enough and it just gets accepted as being the truth. We'll all find out in a few weeks anyway. Hermione had the last word on the matter, and this really was food for thought. I can't believe how far the Weasley twins have come. This time last year you could bet Lockhart would be sporting a pair of donkey ears and braying like an ass. Padma just couldn't be outdone though. Hermione, I thought he was an ass. It was still warm and dry enough to run outside, so that's where Harry and Hermione were next morning. Harry had to broach a rather delicate matter. Hermione, I've been thinking about your birthday. This caused her to actually stop running. Harry, you totally spoiled me on my last birthday, and then again at Christmas. I don't need expensive presents. I've got everything I need standing right beside me. This earned her a kiss from her boyfriend before they started running again. What I intended to ask you was if you wanted a big birthday party like Padma, or prefer just some close friends. They ran for a bit before Hermione answered. She was obviously weighing up the options before reaching a decision. She decided just to say those options out loud so Harry could help. On the one hand, I really don't like being the center of attention. It's different when I'm with you. I know no one's looking at me. It was a rather exasperated Harry who answered that. Did it never occur to you that might be because they know your boyfriend's the jealous type, the boyfriend who's never without his sword at his hip? I saw guys eyeing you up all summer. I made sure they knew you were with me. This caused Hermione to stop again, and then throw herself at Harry in a hug so fierce that it almost saw his armor activate. They began running again. Hermione had reached her decision. So just the holiday crowd then, and perhaps Luna, Colin, and I suppose Ginny. What about letting the girls bring dates? This got a puzzled look from Hermione until Harry explained. I intend to spend the entire night with a certain birthday girl in my arms. That would leave Neville having to cope with both the Patil sisters, Susan and Hannah. Padma would just love us for that. Hermione quickly did the maths in her head and didn't like the number she came up with. That's 13, Harry. We don't need to invite bad luck. She usually turns up herself. How about inviting Henrika? Allowing her to bring a date would see Sirius there too, and having a couple of adults attend would probably square the party with McGonagall as well. Decision made, they pushed on with their run. Both were looking forward to crossing Blades after they were warmed up. Lucius was way beyond warmed up. He was quickly getting to the exhausted stage. The little battered creature at his feet was very glad of that. What do you mean you couldn't find it? I gave you very specific instructions. Dobby followed Master's instructions. I promise I did. I wasn't seen and didn't speak to anyone. I searched the entire room 7 times. I even looked under the pillow when they were sleeping. There was no book there, Master. Dobby looked and looked. This was something Lucius was not expecting. The diary could now be anywhere, even inside Slytherin House. An anonymous warning would be ignored, and anything implicating Lucius Malfoy would come with a one-way ticket to Azkaban included. Even warning Draco was a risk he couldn't take. His son couldn't be seen to be implicated in any way with this matter, or the goblins would soon have Draco barred from the family vault. His idea of revenge was turning into a nightmare that was now running out of control. Hogwarts would soon be visited by death and destruction, and they couldn't even afford to move their son to another school. It was changed days indeed for the Malfoy family. And thanks for reading, and especially all those who took the time to vote. Voting closes on the 18th, and I will post how we got on as soon as we hear. Horace had tried to be subtle. It was something he was usually very good at, but subtlety clearly wasn't working in this case. His repeated attempts to get closer to the boy who lived had been rebuffed at every turn. With his friends always around him, and Harry not taking the normal potions class, his opportunities to get near the boy were being severely limited. With this ball pending, and the 3 Order of Merlin winners being guests of honor, Horace didn't want anyone else getting their hooks into Harry, certainly not before him. As his letters were being ignored, he was going to personally hand-deliver the next invitation. This course of action also presented its own problems. How and when to do it. Meal times were out. That could turn into too much of a spectacle. Horace's choices were eventually whittled down, leaving interrupting one of Harry's classes as his best option. Which particular class was then an easy decision. Minerva, Felius, or Pomona would all chase him if he attempted such a thing. The young history professor should provide no such obstacles in his quest to entrap what would be the star acquisition in his slug club. Excuse me, Professor Hobson, sorry to interrupt your lesson. Horace's eyes were drawn, like the rest of the class, to the box held open in Henrika's hands. The history professor had a priceless teaching aid for her lesson, an Order of Merlin, first class. Henrika had been loaned Harry's award to demonstrate exactly what the Order of Merlin actually looked like. It took a couple of days to research the material, but since Monday, all her classes had learned the facts and protocol behind this most prestigious award. Sirius had practically fallen over with laughter when he'd heard what they were up to, accepting the invitation to Hermione's birthday party on the understanding that he would be invited to the ball too. The history professor hid her shudder well as Call Me Sluggy entered her class. There was something about this man that just made her skin crawl. She'd grown accustomed to males eyeing her up and down almost exclusively as an object of sexual desire. With Sluggy, it felt as if he was calculating how much he could charge others for renting out her sexual favors. Once he owned her. Henrika had never met anyone with a more appropriate nickname. Horace Slughorn was one slimy bastard. None of this showed on her beautiful face as she contrived a weak smile for her Hogwarts colleague. "How can I help you, Professor Slughorn?" "Oh my, that's spectacular." His eyes glued to Harry's award. Horace was now more determined than ever to add the boy who lived to his exclusive club. Sorry to disturb you, Professor Hobson, but I seem to have a slight communications problem. Every owl I send to Harry here seems to go astray, so I thought I would deliver these invitations myself. I know how disappointing it can be for second years to watch those merely a year above them heading off to Hogsmeade, so near and yet so far. That is why I have organized one of my little intimate soirée for Saturday night. I have invitations here for Miss Bones, Mr. Longbottom and Harry. Horace held his invitation out to Harry, only to be greeted with a steely glare. It's Centurion Crow, and the answer is no. A flustered Horace could only splutter a what. In reply, Harry then spelt it out for the head of Slytherin. It is no secret Professor Hobson spent part of the summer holidaying with my family, yet she still refers to me in class as Centurion Crow. On the other hand, we have never met, far less been introduced. By what right do you refer to me as Harry? Slughorn tried to steer the conversation onto calmer waters, having no idea this was as calm as it would get. My apologies, Centurion. No insult was intended. I hope this didn't influence your decision, and we can start again. Let's use this party as the first step to getting to know one another. Apology accepted. I still have a previous engagement, though. Oh, come now. What else is there to do inside Hogwarts on a Saturday night? Horace was then faced with the unusual sight of the entire class laughing at him. Neville was next to speak up. I too have a previous engagement, Professor. I have no intention of missing Hermione's birthday party. Thinking of how he could still swing this deal around, Horace referred to the invitation that was still clutched in his hand. These invitations are for you and a partner. I had of course assumed Miss Granger would be a guest too. That will be a perfect way to celebrate her birthday. Again this was met with laughter. Even members of his own house were laughing at him now. Susan was next to decline. I too have a previous engagement. I was lucky enough to receive an invitation to Hermione's party, and have no intention of missing it. Harry throws the best parties. This was greeted with total agreement. Some of it grudgingly given, to be sure. That was more to do with those not receiving an invitation to the latest one, rather than in any way disputing Susan's statement. Horace was a trier, though. It took a lot to dissuade him once he'd set his mind to something. Then you'll need staff supervision. I of course offer my services. He was cut off immediately by Harry. That won't be necessary. Professor Hobson has already agreed to fulfill that role. But surely you will need a male adult there too. That avenue was also swiftly closed off. Lord Black has kindly agreed to give up his Saturday night to be here in the castle. These arrangements have already been agreed with our head of house and Professor McGonagall. Horace still had Harry's invitation in his hand, but was left clutching at straws. Very well, I would still like to attend though. Surely that is possible. It was Hermione who finally lost it at this point. First, you want to invite us to your party, now you want to gate crash mine? No, in a muggle school, a professor inviting children to a little intimate soiree would see the police, their auras involved. Who chaperones at your parties, Professor? It was an enraged Horace Slughorn who took a step toward Hermione. How dare you? Just as Dan Granger had predicted to his wife and Sirius in that cafe, a threat to Hermione and Centurion Crow showed up. He was firmly between his bonded and Slughorn. It was time to lose the niceties Sirius had been teaching them. Sometimes Harry just had to let his inner goblin out to play. Miss Granger is a friend of the Goblin Nation, and under my personal protection, any threat, verbal or otherwise, will be met with a goblin response. Are you threatening me, boy? I'll have you expelled. Not threatening, Professor, just passing on a warning. I am a Centurion first, and a Hogwarts student second. You need to understand that fact. Screeching abuse at a goblin female will see you lose your head, literally. No goblin would ever stand back and allow that to happen. I have now explained the situation to you. I trust it won't happen again. Harry then turned his back on Slughorn to talk with Hermione. We have people like that in Goblin society too. They eke out a living by putting one contact in touch with another contact. They don't actually contribute anything to our society. They've just found a nice, comfortable niche for themselves. We call them leeches, rather appropriate name in this case, don't you think? His wink almost had Hermione laughing before Harry turned around to face a stunned Slughorn again. "This is the part where you tell me how impressive your list of contacts is and how much they could help me. Can I just point out my father is an ambassador? Lord Black is my godfather. I am heir to the most ancient and noble house of Potter, and that's my Order of Merlin, first class in Professor Hobson's hands. Add to that I holidayed this summer with the Bones, Longbottoms and Pateals. Now tell me what your contacts can do for me." The class was stunned, having never seen Harry act like this before. It was reminiscent of the most arrogant of purebloods. He wasn't finished though. "Tell me, Professor, do you count Tom Riddle among those contacts?" This drew gasps from the other students, and saw a shocked Slughorn take a step back. Harry's attitude now began to make sense, and he still wasn't finished. "I'll bet Riddle was in your slug club. You were his head of house. You made him prefect, and then head boy. Did you use your contacts to help Riddle after he left Hogwarts?" Slughorn couldn't have gotten any paler if a plague of leeches had attached themselves to his bloated body. Blows were being delivered here that his ego might never recover from. "You should have worked out by now that my friends and I have been avoiding you. Now you know why. Stay away from me and my friends. We have no intention of becoming part of Sluggy's collection of misfits and Death Eaters." That Slughorn was receiving hostile stares, even from his own house members, rang the death knell for a resurrected slug club. He couldn't give invitations away to the starving after Harry's tirade. Horace, though, wasn't about to stand here and take that, not from a second year. "Who are you to accuse me, boy? You think brandishing a name makes you brave? You have no idea of the power the Dark Lord wields or the consequences we'll all face when he returns." Horace decided to say no more. The sword, now pointing in his direction, certainly played some part in reaching that decision. He was honest enough to admit the sword was not the major reason for his silence. Looking into those green eyes was a lot more frightening. He'd often heard that Harry had his mother's eyes. Horace would now refute that. They may be the same color and shape, but that was all. These contained a fierceness and ruthless determination Horace had rarely witnessed before, and certainly never in one so young. "This sword is the consequences your Dark Lord will face when he returns. It won't be alone. Thy sword will be backed by every blade Gringotts can muster, and every wand the Ministry has to hand. Voldemort had way less than 100 followers last time, yet people like you cowered in fear and almost let him win. Sealing a house in the middle of the night as decent people slept in their beds before burning everything to the ground is nothing more than the work of rabid animals. These animals will be rounded up and dealt with. Just how many of those animals will be current or former slugs?" As if to emphasize Harry wouldn't be alone, Hermione had her blade drawn and wands were finding their way into hands all around the classroom. No one felt Harry needed help with Slughorn. This was purely a gesture of support. As well as Henrika, there were also Slytherins with their wands now drawn. Horace was just glad none of those wands were pointing at him. The glare from a sword-wielding boy who lived was more than enough to put him off his crystallized pineapple. "You are standing there now, no doubt with information that would help us win this fight. Will you go and speak with Amelia Bones about this? I really don't think so. Even by your inactions, you have chosen your side, and everyone in this classroom can see it. By all means, use your fabled contacts to pass the word. Tell them this from me. There is no more middle ground. This coming fight will affect all of us. You have already chosen your path, and it's a path that disgusts me. How Dumbledore thinks you're fit to lead a house is just one more crime to lay at the headmaster's door." It was a livid head of Slytherin who scuttled out the room. To his credit, Sluggy managed not to leave a trail of liquid behind him. They were just finishing off their dinner when their head of house approached the Ravenclaw table. "Centurion, I have been asked to accompany you to a meeting with the headmaster." This left Harry puzzled. "Master Flitwick, you know that can't happen without my father present." "I informed the headmaster of this," he said. "The issue was so serious it couldn't wait. The claim is you threatened Professor Slughorn with your sword." The second-year Ravenclaws responded en masse to that allegation. Felius didn't need to be head of the House of the Smart to understand they were collectively rubbishing that allegation. "I've been advised that should you decide not to accompany me, The headmaster would have no other option but to take Professor Slughorn's word. That would lead to the cancelling of Miss Granger's party on Saturday night. Hermione was first to react. "No, Harry, I will not be used by Dumbledore to force you into anything. Sorry, guys, the party is now cancelled." This drew groans from those who were invited. But Hermione wouldn't be budged. She held her mate's hand to emphasize her point. "We both know Dumbledore is trying to provoke a reaction here. Let's not give him one. As long as I get to spend my birthday with you, I'll be happy." Harry spotted the Ravenclaw ghost and asked her advice. "My Lady Ravenclaw, can the headmaster do this?" Her answer was not what Harry hoped to hear. In matters of indiscipline, the heads of house and headmaster have a wide range of options open to them. This party is clearly something you want. Withholding it is therefore an appropriate form of punishment. Padma was furious, seeing her friends get punished like this. "But my lady, surely if the punishment is unjust." The headmaster has finally wised up. This drew all the attention onto Harry, waiting on an explanation to his statement. Dumbledore probably knows these allegations are nothing more than a pile of dragon dung. He's punishing Hermione while smugly sitting back, waiting to see what I'll do. If I rush to his office proclaiming my innocence, he wins a small victory. If I contact my father and allow him to deal with it, again I appear weak. Accepting the punishment still works for him, because he gets some payback for all the trouble I've caused him. He felt Hermione squeeze his hand before speaking proudly to him. Those lessons with Sirius are really paying off. Harry looked to Hermione before answering their head of house. "Master Flitwick, I won't be accompanying you to the headmaster's office. He knows that option is not available without my father present, or his old age affecting his mental health." Phileas supposed he really shouldn't have been surprised that these two quickly spotted the trap Dumbledore had set. "I'll tell him, Centurion. You may also tell him this will not go unanswered. Using Hermione's birthday as a lever to get to me is about what we've come to expect from Dumbledore. It makes me wonder why I actually come here. Potions, defense and history are all organized by my father, and I'm teaching Professor McGonagall our method of transfiguration. No offense intended, Master Flitwick, but charms, herbology and astronomy can be tutored too, and I wouldn't have to put up with Dumbledore, Slughorn or Lockhart." Phileas left to deliver Harry's answer, knowing how much this must be hurting. He'd tried to explain to Dumbledore that since goblins don't celebrate Christmas or any other holidays like that, a person's birthday was the most important day of the year. Knowing that this was Hermione's first birthday as Harry's mate made this an extra special occasion, not that he told the headmaster that last piece of news, Dumbledore had been supremely confident the threat to Hermione's party would quickly see Harry comply with whatever scheme he'd conjured up. Hermione had instantly taken that option away by declaring the party cancelled. The head of Ravenclaw didn't think Harry's threat to leave was an idle one either. To Harry, not being able to celebrate his mate's birthday would seem too high a price to pay for what the castle had to offer. Phileas's main worry, though, was how many others he would take with him, and whether Hogwarts could survive the public outcry his leaving would generate. Dumbledore certainly wouldn't survive as headmaster, knowing that fact just might be the thing that would finally tip Harry's hand. He may consider that a price worth paying to leave the castle. Back at the now shocked Ravenclaw table, it was Padma who asked the question that a lot of people wanted to know the answer to. "Would you really leave Hogwarts, Harry?" He could see the looks of disbelief from all around the table, a table that contained more than Ravenclaws, as his friends had rallied round. He tried to explain his position. "Last year was the first time I ever celebrated Christmas, something I plan to do again this year. To a goblin, someone's birthday is the most important day of the year. What would you do if Dumbledore just announced that Christmas was cancelled, made into just another day? You were in that class that smarmy slug has been chasing after me since the Express. Am I just supposed to play along? I hate my fame and am certainly not going to play along with anyone else trying to use it for their benefit." It was a very nervous Padma who asked the next bit. "What about the rest of us?" "My main reason for attending Hogwarts in the first place was to see if I could make some friends. I happen to think I've made some very good ones. Whatever I do, whether it's tutoring or another school, any of my friends who want to join me will be more than welcome." What about me? The quivering voice sounded as if its owner was close to tears. It was also so faint that Harry wasn't sure if he was supposed to hear it. A miserable Luna was not something Harry would ever tolerate, not when he could easily fix it. You weren't listening, Luna. I said those friends who want to join me will be more than welcome. As the implications of what Harry said slowly dawned on Luna, her smile was like the rising sun. It just got brighter and brighter. Watching this, Harry felt he knew how to brighten up a few more of their friends. All were disappointed that the party was cancelled. I was keeping this as a surprise for Saturday, but now seems a good time to let you know. The 3rd through to 7th years will all be able to hit Hogsmeade this weekend. Most will be making preparations for the ball while we'll need to attend in what we brought to Hogwarts. I didn't think this was very fair, so as part of Hermione's birthday celebrations, there will be a squad of Gringotts tailors in the castle on Saturday morning. They will be bringing loads of suits and dresses in the style we wore to the summer ball, and they are exclusively for those who can't leave the castle, namely the 1st and 2nd years. I would advise you to get down early as they will be working on a first-come basis. They will have clothes for everyone. You may not get exactly what you want though if someone picks it first. Morrig was not alone in almost hyperventilating at that thought. She did though manage to express her thanks. Harry, that's fantastic. I'll gladly wear anything they bring, but you didn't leave us much time to send home for the gold to buy them. Probably because you won't need gold. It's part of my gift to Hermione. For us to attend the ball, dressed differently would make us stand out from the rest of you, not something we would intentionally do. At the same time, why should we let some of the older students attend the ball dressed finer than us? The solution was simple. Even the smart Ravenclaws were struggling to understand this. Mandy needed confirmation. So you're buying us dresses as a birthday present for Hermione? Yes, so Hermione can wear the new dress I got her to the ball. Harry, you got me a new dress. I still have the one from summer, which has been all over the prophet. Can't have people thinking I can't buy my girlfriend a new dress. This was said with such a smile that everyone understood the prophet had nothing to do with it. Harry just wanted to buy Hermione a new dress, one that would probably see her become the belle of the ball, and was prepared to kit out everyone else in a similar fashion so she could wear it. Oh, Padma, Parvati, Susan and Hannah, there are new dresses with your name on them too. Neville didn't get one though. This got a laugh from all of them as news of this quickly spread to all 4 houses. Albus was waiting with Horace in his office. Getting Harry to apologize to the head of Slytherin would be a good start. It would get Horace off his back and teach Harry a little humility, something the boy was sadly lacking in. It was a good job he was sitting down though as Phileas entered the office alone. Phileas, where is Harry? Sitting chatting with his friends. The little professor refused to say another word. Phileas was really angry with Albus and had no intention of making this easy. Albus was struggling to believe the lad wouldn't rush up here. Harry had raced to the infirmary that night on the merest chance. Miss Granger could be in danger. How could he possibly be still sitting with his friends? Did you pass on my message? Yes. The silence drew as Phileas refused to say any more. If Albus wanted to treat him as a message boy, he would act like one. What was his response? I believe he is currently debating with his friends why he bothers attending Hogwarts. Most of his classes are already tutored and he wouldn't need to endure 2 professors who want to use his fame and a headmaster determined to assert control over his life. Personally, I can see his point. Albus was so shocked at his miscalculation, he didn't even notice Minerva and Henrika entering his office. And Miss Granger's birthday party? Oh, she saw right through you. Miss Granger refused to let it be a lever for you to control her boyfriend. She cancelled the party immediately. Horace then totally misread the situation. Well, if he apologizes, my offer for Saturday night still stands. Henrika exploded at that. Dumbledore, where did you get this slimy bastard? He comes into my class, causes a rumpus, and then goes running off to you with a story of big bad 2nd years beating him up. Harry verbally destroyed this smarmy git, and his sluggy club. He was prepared to back those views up physically. after this buffoon started shouting at Hermione. Slughorn's reputation is now shit, even amongst the Slytherins, yet that's who you chose to back, instead of even talking to me. It was my class. It should be me you are summoning, not a student you are forbidden from speaking with. Kindly remember who you are speaking to, Professor Hobson. And you would do well to remember that I don't work for Albus Dumbledore. I would never have taken the job otherwise. If Harry is seriously considering leaving Hogwarts, you can bet he'll take his friends with him. I honestly don't know if the school could survive the publicity of that. I know you couldn't. No one will be going anywhere once Harry calms down and comes to his senses. This time, it was Minerva who got ripped into the headmaster. Harry was sitting laughing with his friends. There is no calming down for him to do. Judging by the amount of excitement being generated down there, I would guess Harry just announced his surprise. His father wrote to me requesting permission. I of course said yes. The headmaster made no attempt to hide the sarcasm in his question. Since I am the headmaster, don't you think I should be aware of this surprise? Well, since you've left me to run the school for years, that would be a no. Harry has arranged for goblin tailors to come here Saturday morning, providing dresses and suits. No, I will not allow such a thing. Promoting goblin wares while denying trade to the village of Hogsmeade cannot be allowed. I'm surprised at you, Minerva. There was no way McGonagall was going to stand for that. Perhaps if you would shut up and let me finish, you wouldn't be. These tailors are here specifically for all the first and second years. Students not allowed to attend Hogsmeade. This is a service Centurion Crow is providing free of charge. All bills are being met by him. The greed expressed in Slughorn's face was visible to all in the headmaster's office. He's paying for new clothes for the entire 2 years' worth of students. Minerva didn't really try to hide the disgust she felt for Horace when answering him. Yes, for some of these children, these will be the finest clothes they've ever owned. They will also attend their first ball, dressed as well as their peers. Was I supposed to say no to an offer like that? On behalf of Hogwarts, I graciously accepted Barchoke's offer and offered him our gratitude in return for making such a gesture. You thank him by forcing Miss Granger's party to be cancelled. Horace felt his situation was being ignored. You can't have hoodlums threatening their professors with swords. An angry Veela cut him off before any more could be said. Point number 1, Slughorn, you are not one of his professors and had no reason, other than your own personal gain, for approaching Harry in my class. Point number 2, Harry never threatened you with his sword, which destroys your entire reason for running off to Dumbledore in the first place. If looks could kill, Henrika would have been vaporized by the glare Horace was directing at her. The Veela was unconcerned as she told the true story of what had happened in her class earlier. Professor Slughorn here was loudly proclaiming the fate that would await us all when his friend Voldemort returned. Harry drew his sword to demonstrate exactly what was waiting on Voldemort should he return. At no point was Harry's blade anywhere near Sluggy. Was this the story you heard, Headmaster? Albus now had his head in his hands, wondering how things had went so wrong. Again. He understood that the game was over the instant Miss Granger had cancelled her own party. With no leverage, Harry was always going to refuse his request. Now he was in an even worse position, one that it was probably impossible for him to recover from. There was no way he could reinstate the party. Any remaining credibility would be instantly destroyed. Albus might as well resign here and now. He needed some leverage on Harry, anything at all he could use, and time was running out. There was no doubt there would be a full report on its way to the boy's father. Hobson would see to that. Amelia and Augusta would also be receiving full reports, only their sources would be different. Both their charges were actually in the class. I suppose we should be grateful he hasn't withdrawn from next week's ball. Again Minerva cut off her boss. He may not have withdrawn, but already asked for a set of conditions. He won't sit near you or Lockhart, and refuses to be photographed with either of you, and that was before your latest escapade. Henrika then added to their misery. You both will also have his godfather to deal with when he comes here on Saturday. Sirius will not be pleased that a party he was invited to was forced to be cancelled. You can expect an irate Lord Black to make his opinion known. Phileas followed both witches out the headmaster's office, leaving Horace to ask Dumbledore if he was still going to punish Harry. Horace, cancelling the party is punishment enough, especially since it's now emerging all the boy did was refuse your clumsy approach. Trust me, Horace, you don't want to push this any further. Sirius will be livid and Harry's father isn't exactly the forgiving type. My advice would be to stay well away from Harry, and even further from Miss Granger. Approach her again and you just might get a closer look at Gryffindor's famous sword. It was a very disgruntled Horace who left the headmaster's office. He hadn't gotten one single thing he wanted. Albus hadn't either, but he was slowly getting used to that outcome when dealing with the boy who lived. The birthday girl made her way down the stairs to the common room, finding herself engulfed in a pair of oh-so-familiar arms. Hermione made a startling discovery. Getting kissed as a teenager was so much better as her boyfriend delivered her birthday kiss. Harry was nuzzling into Hermione's hair as he wished her a happy birthday. We may not be able to have a party, but I'm still hoping to make your day special. Hermione was in Harry's arms, so gave the only answer she could. Harry, it's already special, you don't need to do any more. I know, but I want to. We better set off for our run. I have plans for the rest of the day. Harry, you know I don't like surprises. Oh, I think you'll like these ones. Ones, as in more than one? Come on, at least give me a clue. It is my birthday, you know. Haha, Granger, nice try. Let's go. Showered and dressed in her dueling robes after her run, Hermione now found Padma and Luna waiting on her. Birthday hugs were followed by gifts. There was no joke item from her best friend this year. The book's title might have caused some raised eyebrows amongst muggles. To Hermione, The Bonds of Love would be read from cover to cover, looking for information on the special bond she shared with her mate. The present she received from their younger friend was exquisite, strange, yet very touching at the same time. Hermione found herself holding a flower that had been turned into glass crystal, reflecting the light in a rainbow of colors. That the flower was a dandelion was neither here nor there. Hermione's smile saw Luna's face glow with a happiness that outshone her gift. It's a family spell my mother taught me. That's the first time I've cast it not using her wand. My room at home is full of them. It's beautiful, Luna, thank you very much. Harry's arrival saw them all head down to breakfast to find a great hall almost bereft of first and second year students. Neville soon joined them, wishing Hermione a happy birthday and handing over his present. Opening the wrapping revealed an elaborately carved silver photo frame. Hermione was in tears at the inscription, never mind the subject matter. Friends Forever was a precious gift to a girl who'd been friendless just over a year ago. The picture featured the four of them at the Black Sea, and Hermione remembered Augusta taking it. It was a wizarding picture that had them all laughing and clowning around for the camera. How happy they were was clearly projected from the frame. The girls were so happy at this gift. Neville got a thank you kiss from both Hermione and Padma. Harry loved the gift too, but refrained himself to a comment. Okay, Longbottom, way to set the present bar high. I'm sure you've got it covered, Harry. When Gran showed me that photograph, I knew it would be perfect for this. I've got a copy for you and Padma too. Mine is in a frame beside my bed. Hermione had it sitting in the middle of the table and kept glancing at it as they ate breakfast. It was Padma who broached the subject of the missing students. Where is everybody? Well, the boys are queued outside Professor Flitwick's room, while the girls are waiting at Henrika's. New clothes for the ball are apparently more important than breakfast. Neville's explanation had Padma looking toward Luna. She quickly answered the unspoken question. Oh, I'm just happy to be going. I'll pop along later and pick up a dress. Well, we should be thankful for small mercies. At least we won't have Colin shoving his camera in our faces while he's waiting to get fitted for a suit. I swear some days I can still see flashes when I close my eyes. I think you should have a word with him, Harry. The blank looks coming from her fellow Ravenclaws generated the first twinge of unease in Padma. He does follow you around taking pictures when you least expect it. Hermione was shaking her head. Not since the first day or so. He's calmed down since then. The giggles coming from Luna told them they were all missing something here, all except Neville. His head was down as he tried to eat his breakfast and blend into the surroundings. Unease was quickly turning to alarm as Padma asked for answers. Okay, Luna, what's going on? Nothing at all. Colin is just sweet on you. Very sweet. Padma's gaze shifted to Harry. He was clearly trying to stifle his laughter, and just as clearly didn't know about this beforehand. Hermione appeared as shocked as she felt, but Neville still had his head down, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. Neville? That was enough to see his feeble defenses crumble. I'm sorry. I should have told you. I thought Parvati would have mentioned it. It was an even more confused Padma who asked for some elaboration. Parvati? What has she got to do with this? Neville was struggling with what to say, so decided to just blurt it out. Colin asked her if she could teach him to dance. He wanted to learn for Hermione's party. Colin also wanted to know what it would be like to dance with you. Padma visibly winced at that. Ouch! I'll bet Parvati took that well. I think she got him with 3 stinging hexes before Colin managed to make it up the stairs to his dorm. It's been a running joke in Gryffindor for almost a week now. This news certainly didn't improve Padma's mood. My sister is being made fun of, and you never mentioned it? This was greeted by Neville shaking his head. It's more Colin they're ribbing. It's good-natured though, and he's fine with it. I tried to speak with Parvati about this and got my head chewed off. She told me that she didn't need her sister's boyfriend looking out for her, and then told me to piss off. While the other 3 were contemplating that, Luna focused their thoughts. Fred and George are almost the one person, but you and your sister are very different. I could never mistake you for Parvati. Padma decided she would need to speak with her twin later. Professor Weasley had arrived for their lesson. Harry was receiving strange looks from his 3 friends as they found themselves once more in the room that had held the diadem. He offered an explanation. Today's lesson will be a bit different. We've been learning how to detect threats. Today we get a chance to use this. Last time we were in here, we didn't really have time to explore. This morning we will, and hopefully sort some of the treasure from the junk. Oh, anything that has Hermione's name on it is hers. This certainly got the birthday girl's attention. You hid presents for me in here? A smiling Harry answered his enthusiastic mate. Just some of them, Hermione. The quartet started searching, with anything that caught their interest being checked first. Bill was also on hand to make doubly sure they didn't come across anything they couldn't handle. They were working in pairs when Padma's shout had Hermione running over to see what she'd found, a small box with Hermione Granger written on a gift tag. Opening the box, she discovered a pendant that had a familiar design. A golden chain was attached to a 2-inch hoop of the same material. A beautifully carved golden crow had its wings spread in flight across the hoop, but held a golden heart in its claws instead of a sword. I've got the badges ready for the Marauders on Tuesday night, but I had this one made especially for you. Do you like it? Harry, I love it. Will you put it on me? Hermione lifted her hair as Harry fastened the clasp before giving her a kiss. Beautiful. Now let's see if you can find the other one. That was all the motivation Hermione needed. Soon finding her other hidden gift. The young witch's hands were trembling as she realized what the ancient book was. She now held in her hands. Harry? Helena was disgusted that Dumbledore forced you to cancel your party. She hopes this will help make up for that. The goblin translation charm Professor Flitwick cast on you is in there too, along with quite a few others. Helena also knew you would really appreciate it. What Hermione held in her hands was a gift beyond treasure, a notebook belonging to Helena's mother, Rowena Ravenclaw. If you closed your eyes in the Great Hall of Hogwarts, it would be impossible to guess that 70% of the students were off having their lunch in Hogsmeade. The first and second-year students, who had no choice but to remain in the castle, were generating enough noise and excitement to easily compensate for those missing. All had gotten new outfits this morning and were busily describing them to anyone who'd listen. Hermione's eyes were currently closed, while Henrika's hands over them meant she couldn't see anything. The ohs and noahs of the Great Hall's occupants alerted her that something was going on, then bursting into singing Happy Birthday was also a rather large clue. Henrika removing her hands left Hermione looking at a rather large cake, complete with 13 candles, all waiting to be blown out. Sirius was levitating it to a space on the table right in front of her that her friends had cleared. She may have been blushing from all the attention, but Hermione was one happy witch. Blowing the candles out resulted in much cheering and a pile of plates appearing beside the monster cake. Hermione cut a few pieces for her friends before allowing Hogwarts to take over the distribution. Pretty soon, everyone had a piece. With almost the entire first and second year sitting at the Ravenclaw table, Sirius and Hendrika joined them. The Marauder was far too jovial for the current situation, telling those who knew him that Sirius was up to something. They didn't have long to wait. "Well, Miss Granger, I also have some presents for you. I'm under strict instructions, though, not to hand them over unless the homework we gave you last week gets an outstanding." Hermione wasn't alone in asking, "Homework? Oh dear, I expected better from you four. What will we do about this situation, Professor Hobson?" "Well, Lord Black, they really leave me no option. I'm so disappointed in you four. I think your attitude really needs to be worked on. We shall do that tonight when the four of you have detention with me. Don't bother with dinner. Oh, and wear something nice." Hannah may have started the giggling, but it soon spread as more and more students realized exactly what was happening here. The loud laughter soon attracted an unwelcome visitor, the headmaster. "I couldn't help overhearing, Professor, that you gave 4 students detention for tonight. I hope you intend to have them doing meaningful work." Henrika had an answer ready for that particular question. "You mean like Professor Lockhart has students assist him with answering his fan mail? These 4 have been taking extra lessons on wizarding etiquette. Lord Black and I intend to ensure they don't embarrass us at the Merlin Ball next Saturday. We'll be working their socks off tonight." "Forgive me for saying so, Professor, but that sounds like a party to me, a party that you know I cancelled. A party requires invited guests. Headmaster, therefore this can't be a party. These 4 will be serving detention with us. That detention will consist of learning how to behave at a party. Of course, it will only be a simulation." The sniggering from some of the pupils wasn't helping Albus's mood. "This appears to me to be a clear case of you attempting to undermine my authority as headmaster, something I can't allow." Sirius cut him off, though it was clearly Lord Black who stood to face Dumbledore. "I have with me the proper signed authority to take these 4 from Hogwarts right now. I would also like to add that this parchment doesn't contain a date for when they may return." This had Albus in a cold sweat. "Might I see this signed authority? If I have to take the parchment out of my pocket, it stays out and these 4 leave with us. It's your call, Headmaster. What do you want to do?" It wasn't lost on the students that this was pretty much a similar decision to the one Harry had been forced into by the headmaster, only Dumbledore didn't have Hermione to help him out. Albus was sorely tempted to call Black's bluff, but he couldn't be 100% sure it was a bluff. The Goblin would certainly sign the papers to allow Harry and Miss Granger to leave. The other parents had also holidayed over the summer with Black. He really couldn't take the risk of losing Harry over something so trivial it would be forgotten by the time the Merlin Ball came around. "Carry on, Professor Hobson." With that, Albus headed off to his office. A delighted Hermione now pounced on Harry, leaving him to thank the person who made this possible. "Sirius, have I ever told you that you're the coolest godfather on the planet?" Sirius was apologizing to the other girls for not being able to give them detention too, hence the large birthday cake at lunchtime. Padma was delighted for her friend, and then she felt the tug on her sleeve. Parvati appeared in a right temper. "Were you really going to just leave Hogwarts with them? Don't I count for anything anymore? Pav, if I know Sirius, he doesn't have any such parchment in his pocket." This didn't lessen Parvati's glare or ire. "I notice you didn't answer any of the questions I just asked. I suppose that in itself is an answer." Padma watched her twin sister storm away, before Lavender spoke to her. "I'll try and calm her down, but she'd gone to a lot of trouble to get a date for Hermione's party. Hearing it was cancelled was bad enough, now it's back on, but she can't go." Lavender didn't say the final part, both girls knew what she meant though. Parvati couldn't go, but Padma could. She felt a comforting arm slip around her shoulder and Neville's reassuring voice in her ear. "It's not your fault, Padma, it isn't really Parvati's either. Dumbledore spoiled it for all of us. We both know Sirius would have everyone there if he could. Deep down, Parvati knows that too. When she cools down, she'll be sorry for what she said. Neville found himself being kissed by Padma for the second time that day. What did I do to deserve that? Just for being you, and keep your arm there. If I have to protect you from witches, you can start repaying me by discouraging amorous first years, especially ones with cameras. Hermione was having a wonderful time. A lovely meal had been shared by the 6 of them. Now it was time to dance. Hogwarts had provided a room that was a lot more intimate than anything they were used to. Next week's ball would be a much grander affair. Harry glanced at the witch in his arms and smiled. I did have contingency plans in place, you know. There was no way we weren't doing this on your birthday. As they waltzed around the small dance floor, Hermione's curiosity was piqued. Oh, and just what did you have planned? Dinner for 2, followed by dancing. In my room. I had already arranged with Hogwarts to remove the bed and gotten my hands on a wizarding wireless. That sounds lovely, though I'm sure Dumbledore would still have found something to complain about. No chaperone? I can just see Slughorn volunteering. Oh, I had a chaperone arranged too, one that not even the headmaster could fault, Lady Helena. Remembering her gift saw Hermione's eyes sparkle even more. That would have given me a chance to thank her in private. Mentioning I've got one of her mother's notebooks would start a riot at the Ravenclaw table. You really get on well with her, don't you? She's a very nice lady. I can kinda understand what it must have been like for her. I have the whole goblin boy who lived rubbish to put up with. Imagine trying to live up to being Rowena Ravenclaw's daughter. Recovering her diadem was a big relief from the guilt she had been carrying. You must have noticed she now smiles a lot more than she used to. This had Hermione nodding. I came down the other morning and she was sitting having a conversation with Luna. Both looked really pleased with their chat. I'm so sorry Luna couldn't be here tonight. She was really looking forward to going to a party. Hermione had another reason to regret her original party being cancelled. I hope Parvati doesn't give Padma too hard a time because she couldn't come here tonight. Sirius explained it to everyone. Harry was hoping that his final gift for Hermione went as well as the rest of her birthday. With this one, though, he could only hope and wait for Irgit's arrival in the morning. Dan had Emma wrapped in his arms. They were sitting on their sofa, watching Hermione's message replay on a loop setting. Both parents really missed their daughter, especially today, and this way it at least felt as if they got to see Hermione on her birthday. I still can't believe how much she's grown, or that she didn't have this written down word for word. Her reading from a prepared script wouldn't have had anywhere near the same impact as this did. That is our Hermione, wearing her heart on her sleeve. This was not the first time Emma had disagreed with her husband over their daughter. It was time to face her own mistakes from that night. Dan, I'm so sorry. You had legitimate concerns for our daughter's safety, and I just ignored them. And I saw Hermione breaking her heart and immediately cast you as the villain. Seeing the kids' reactions just scrambled my brains and I panicked too. Dan just held his wife closer, providing comfort as she cried into his chest. Sirius wasn't the only one who noticed you mothering those 2 boys. I know we always wanted more children. We only drew back from adopting when Hermione started having bouts of accidental magic. I wish we could have known that's what it was at the time. Emma well remembered the numbing terror of thinking there was something wrong with their daughter. Toddlers shouldn't be able to have their picture books floating to them. Her husband's arms provided comfort as he attempted to analyze exactly what went wrong that night. Our reactions were all pretty predictable, and it hurts even more because of that. I saw Hermione in danger, and tried to remove her from the threat. Hermione saw me trying to separate her from Harry. There was only one way she was ever going to react to that. You saw a distraught daughter, and Mummy Bear went into protecting Cubs mode. We were all right, but at the same time all wrong. As both contemplated their actions that night, they were interrupted by a knock at the door. That it was the back door immediately focused their attention. That door was now only used by people porting into the garden. The quizzical glances were soon replaced by excitement as Emma had a thought. Serious? He must have had to bring the kids home. This had both racing to the back door, not realizing Hermione wouldn't have knocked at her own home. Their visitor was the last person they expected to be standing there. Noticing Emma had been crying, he asked if this was a bad time. The entire situation was awkward enough without adding anything else to the mix. Both Grangers quickly reassured their guest that this was not the case, inviting the goblin into their lounge, where the message from Hermione was still playing. This halted Barchoke in his tracks. He was unable to take his eyes off Hermione, pleading for her family to be put together again. As the recording ended, Dan stepped forward to stop the cycle repeating. He and his wife were wondering just what the goblin was doing in Crawley when Barchoke spoke. Children are a wonderful blessing, and sometimes we have to stand back and look at things from their perspective. We have Sirius providing lessons to them on wizarding culture, while you have done your best to equip them both to survive in the Muggle world, as have I for our culture. In all that we made a terrible mistake. No one is teaching the parents about these cultures that are totally alien to us. Our children hope to be able to wrap their lives around all three. Yet we are totally ignorant about two of them. I believe this was the basis for our misunderstanding, and really hope we can move forward from here. This left Dan and Emma gobsmacked, and Barchoke wasn't yet finished with the shocks. I understand from my son that not asking a girl's father for her hand is a serious breach of your protocol. On behalf of my son and I would like to offer our apologies for this. Harry assures me it is something he intends to put right. He will be asking your permission before they get engaged. I believe Hermione's 17th birthday was mentioned as a possible date for this event. Dan had thought about what he was going to say to Barchoke, but the goblin turning up here and apologizing to him blew all his carefully considered words out through his ears. Should Harry approach me with that question? My answer will of course be yes. I'm hardly likely to grill him about his future prospects, or whether he can support my little girl. Emma held her breath at Dan's attempt at humor, especially at a time like this. A slight grin from Barchoke signaled that her husband had actually judged the mood right. You know fine well that the reason I'll be saying yes is I truly believe what Hermione said in her message to us. Their bond indicates they could search the entire country and not find anyone more suited. They make each other happy, and what more could a father ask for? I should have taken the time to see that instead of acting the way I did. For that, I too am sorry. The goblin nodded his acceptance. Harry also sent a message to me saying that an ambassador has to be able to see both sides of any arguments, and then negotiate a settlement that lands somewhere in the middle. Is that why you're here? Emma just had to ask. My son's words made me stand back and think. It was something else, though, that brought me here tonight. I asked Harry what I could get my daughter for her birthday. He replied that putting our family back together again would be the greatest gift I could give Hermione. From what I saw of her message, my son was right. The shocked silence this was greeted with by both Grangers saw Barchoke think he'd overstepped the mark. I'm sorry if I got it wrong by calling Hermione my daughter. Emma's hand on his arm stopped him saying any more. Providing you don't mind us considering Harry as our son too, I certainly have no problems with that. Dan's nod of agreement saw a lot of the tension leave the room. Stay and celebrate our daughter's birthday with us. There is so much we need to talk about. So much we still don't know about each other. Let's sit and chat and try to ensure something like that evening will never happen again. Dan's words started the rebuilding of their family. That it was being developed on the love each parent had for their children meant their family was being rebuilt on a strong foundation and would rise like a phoenix from the ashes, reborn and be even stronger than before. Hermione could see Harry was nervous about something as they headed down to breakfast. She couldn't think of any reason for this and resolved to ask him about it as soon as they were alone. Irgit's arrival saw that anxiety spike before Harry's face wore a wide smile. She couldn't contain her curiosity any longer. Harry, anything you want to tell me? Switching to his own language, Harry gave his bonded her final present for her birthday. My father asked what he could get his daughter for her birthday. I told him putting our family back together would be a great gift. He celebrated your birthday in Crawley last night with your mum and dad. Hermione had been blown away with the stud earrings Sirius brought from Barchoke. Her real gift, though, left her speechless. Fortunately, she didn't need words to display how much that news meant to her. Leaning forward, she gave Harry a kiss that contained all the love she felt for her wonderful mate. There were witches sitting at the Ravenclaw table, who still harbored hopes of dating the boy who lived. Those hopes died as they witnessed that kiss. It wasn't by any means a snogfest. It wasn't even passionate. There was just so much love and tenderness expressed between the couple by this simple act that you would need to have been really stupid to harbor any hope that these two weren't a very serious couple, and stupid people didn't get to wear the blue and bronze of Ravenclaw. Padma hadn't noticed Harry's anxiety, though could hardly miss him conversing with Hermione in his own language. Her fears were immediately quashed by Hermione's reaction to whatever the news was. It was now time to tease. Okay, now you two have gotten that out of your system. Care to share the good news? Hermione's eyes never left Harry's as she gave her friend enough information to fill in any blanks. Harry's father levered my birthday with my mum and dad last night. This saw Padma dive on both of them, knowing how much this meant to her friends. The comment from Roger followed on close behind. Any news you'd like to share there, Harry? Only that I am one lucky guy, Roger. Sitting there with two girls hugging you at breakfast, it's kinda hard to disagree with that. This drew some laughs, and Harry was quite prepared to joke right back. Patil hugs are only surpassed by those from a Granger, though I don't think Neville would agree with me. Seeing Padma blush at that just added to their good mood. She teased Harry and Hermione enough to warrant some gentle payback. Bill's arrival signaled it was time to get serious. They were all up for their lesson today. Crow's Marauders were also up for their lesson on Tuesday evening. Having them swap activities last week meant tonight was the time to put those lessons into practice. They were split into teams of 4, wherever possible, ensuring that each team had a member of the 4 houses and was a balance of the sexes. They were then involved in a round-robin tournament that whittled them down to 4 teams. A semi-final and final soon followed. Luna's team actually reached the final, and she was the last member standing. Unfortunately, there were still 2 left from the other team, and she got tagged, taking one of the pair out. There was loud cheering from all present, and the winners got a bar of Honeyduke's finest chocolate. The 4 Rayers ended the evening by handing out the club badges to all members, leaving a lot of extremely happy first years heading back to their dorms. Henrika walked back with them as the quartet also headed back. They were discussing what had worked, what hadn't, and who had excelled. Neville was shaking his head at Colin's antics. He's bought into the whole brave Gryffindor persona. That's why he keeps charging right into battle. His curses are accurately cast, but against 4 opponents you are always going to get hit. I think we need to start using stinging curses. That should discourage that behavior a lot more than a blob of color that disappears. In any real fight, his tactics would see him hit every time. Hermione found herself agreeing. He's agile enough to be good at evading, he just doesn't seem to want to. There were a few more who acted the same. Harry had experience of this phenomenon from his own training. When you make training fun, there's a tendency to treat it like a game. Goblins are taught with wooden swords, but are moved onto real blades as soon as they've mastered the basics. I agree with Neville, nothing focuses your mind more than knowing your opponent is trying to do you an injury with their weapon. I think we would then need to cut it down to pairs though. Having 8 first years firing off stinging hexes at the same time is a recipe for disaster. The 3 Claws entered their common room to hear the first years raving about their lesson and proudly displaying their badges. Harry needed his lightning-fast reflexes when a curse suddenly came flying at them. He deflected it harmlessly into the ceiling, while Padma and Hermione took down their attacker with a couple of very accurate stunners. Roger woke to find himself flat on his back and the sword of Gryffindor resting under his chin. I would like an explanation, Davies, and I would like it now. The explanation didn't help the trio. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why we need them to train us in defense. I'm a 4th year near the top of my year too. Yet 3 second years easily handled my surprise attack before handing me my arse. You might also notice that every wand in 1st and 2nd year is currently pointing at me. Now that is how it's supposed to be. Harry felt a gentle hand on his shoulder as Penny spoke to him. It's okay, Harry. I've got this. Professor Flitwick turned down their request for extra defense lessons. He said it would cause problems with the other houses if these lessons were only available for Ravenclaws, and he doesn't have the time to basically do the job Lockhart's already being paid to do. Roger here, however, unwisely, was trying to prove a point that you were our next best option. I expected to get taken down, but not that easily. What did I do wrong? Harry sheathed his sword before helping his friend to his feet. Your curse was powerful enough, but your aim was slightly off. It was going to hit my shoulder, making it easier to dodge, but I knew Padma was behind me. I deflected it upward to be safe. Padma then joined the critique. You fired a curse and then just stood there, waiting to see what would happen next. Against multiple opponents you should have continued to cast and been on the move at all times. This was normal procedure for the Ravenclaw trio. They did it after every fight. The rest of the house, though, watched on in astonishment as Hermione continued ripping Roger's technique to shreds. As he was the one who ended up on the ground, they couldn't find fault with one word of it. You also didn't use any of the advantages your ambush site provided. There is big, heavy furniture and doorways to provide cover. You didn't use any of it. Okay, I'm now more convinced than ever I need some defense lessons from you guys. Any time, any place. Just say the word, and I'll be there. Roger's pleading meant Harry was always going to cave on this one. We have the ball on Saturday. You get a list together of those who want to be involved, and we'll see what we can do next week. The older wizard now had his arm around Harry's shoulders. Thanks, Harry. I knew we could count on you. Roger now had a puzzled look on his face as he removed his arm and prodded Harry on the chest. Merlin, Harry, you're solid. What the hell do you eat to get like that? Mr. Davies, would you kindly stop prodding my boyfriend? You don't get like that from eating, rather years of hard work. I happen to like it very much. She now had her arms wrapped about Harry as Roger appeared more embarrassed over this than getting stunned. Penny then dragged him away for a severe bollocking, explaining in no uncertain terms what would happen the next time he fired a curse in the common room. The second-year trio got their books out and joined the rest of their year-mates in some studying before bed. It was potions first thing tomorrow, and no one wanted to enter that class unprepared. Checking that everyone knew exactly what they were supposed to be doing had become a bit of a ritual. The evening before Master Pitsley's classes, Gilderoy had something of a dilemma on his hands. He so wanted to attend the Merlin ball. Gilderoy had the exact outfit in mind. The problem was that, as a guest of honor, he would be obliged to wear an Order of Merlin. He'd worried the problem like a dog with a bone before finally getting to the marrow of the problem. Gilderoy had narrowed it down to two choices. Each option, though, was not without risk. His first was to feign illness. This was risky in that Hogwarts had its own healer on the premises and his presence at the ball was sure to be missed. There was also the fact that Gilderoy really wanted to go to the ball. His other option was to attend and just bluff his way through the evening. This was his favorite option for two reasons. The first one was obvious. He got to attend the ball. The second was also self-explanatory. The gullible wizarding public had been swallowing the shite he'd been passing off as the truth for years. Why should Saturday night be any different? Harry felt different as he walked down to breakfast, and it wasn't hard to work out why. He was wearing his tunic as normal on a weekend. His sword was at his hip, his epaulettes were displayed on his shoulders, his centurion bands, as well as Hermione, were on his arm. The only difference was the award worn on his chest, and yet it seemed to change everything. Hermione had given him his morning kiss, but then said he looked so handsome. He himself felt like a warrior on parade, awaiting an inspection from the director. Harry thought letting Hendrika borrow his award to display to her classes would have lessened the effect, but people were certainly treating him differently, almost reverently. He wondered if this was how Dumbledore became so detached from reality. Harry had this reaction for less than an hour and already knew he didn't like it. Dumbledore had been receiving this treatment for decades. Harry also had friends who would quickly put him right if his head started getting too big. Padma would soon puncture an inflated head with a few well-aimed barbs, and he didn't even want to think what Hermione's reaction to any arrogance on his part would be. On entering the great hall, custom dictated Harry headed for the staff table. Harry added the centurion's salute to his bow to the headmaster, a fellow Order of Merlin holder, his award shining brightly on the dark purple robes that could almost have been classed as demure for Dumbledore. Whatever Harry's dispute with the headmaster, it was irrefutable that Dumbledore had earned his Order of Merlin, first class, the hard way. He had been a great warrior for the light once, though appeared to have lost his way as he'd aged. "Well met, headmaster. A good morning to you too, centurion." Albus had stood and returned the bow. If nothing else, the award pinned to the lad's tunic deserved it. "It would appear the third member of our exclusive group has yet to join us for breakfast. Since I know you have lessons for the rest of the day, I'm sure you can leave the formalities until tonight's ball." Both Harry and Albus were smiling as he headed back to the Ravenclaw table. That in itself was something of a major achievement. When Bill arrived for their lesson, a quick word saw Harry reach a decision. "Roger, you're with us. If you want to learn so badly that you'll ambush us in the common room, I think it's time you learned what you're letting yourself in for." Roger was out of his seat like a shot, following them out the hall. Lockhart never made an appearance at breakfast. The defense professor was also conspicuous by his absence at lunch, as was Roger Davies. It was actually Cho who worked up the courage to ask where he was. This inquiry was greeted with 4 smiles before Harry answered. "He's in his room, probably sleeping by now. Will someone make sure to wake him in time for tonight's ball?" "Oh, and do it early enough to make sure he has plenty of time for a hot bath. Best thing for sore muscles." "What did you do to him?" Padma resented that question. She didn't even see who asked it, but that didn't matter. "We didn't do anything to him, he just wanted to do the same lesson as us." Roger spent the last half hour of the lesson lying exhausted on the floor. "We do this for 6 hours every weekend." Roger thought he could dive right in and do the same. He's physically and magically exhausted, but should feel better after a few hours' sleep. "We have another set of lessons to go yet, and then the ball." No more questions were asked, though Roger would be well and truly quizzed later. Harry was left questioning his eyesight as Hermione floated down the stairs to meet him. He knew his mate was beautiful, but this was just too much. Her blue dress just did something that melted his insides. A gentle kiss of greeting got his brain into gear once more, and he offered Hermione his arm. His "my lady" comment wasn't missed by anyone there either. Hermione was certainly his lady. Harry then offered his other arm to Padma. "Miss Patil, may I escort you to your date? I wouldn't want anyone to get the idea you were available. Neville would be most upset." The trio led the students of Ravenclaw House toward the 7th floor, where quite a crowd had gathered. The headmaster and most of the staff were waiting on them along with the Lady Helena. Harry bowed deeply to the ghost. "My lady, please thank Hogwarts for providing the room tonight." Helena's voice held some mirth as she replied, "Hogwarts is very pleased with the changes her champion is instigating, and welcomed the idea of the entire school being able to celebrate on this special day. I would like to propose that the last Saturday in September be set aside to make this an annual event. It certainly gets the school year off to a magnificent start. We've never seen the students so happy and think this should be encouraged." Albus quickly stepped in to gain some more much-needed positive points with the students. "I think that is a tremendous idea and will certainly add it to the school calendar for future years." The evening was off to a flyer, and Harry hadn't even opened the room yet. When he did, more than a few jaws hit the floor. The room surpassed anything they had seen before. Yes, it was slightly bigger than the Great Hall, but Hogwarts had solved the accommodation problem using a different method. There was a stage for the band located in one corner of the square room, with tables that held 12 all around the sides. Above those tables was a series of balconies that, except for above the stage, surrounded the hall. The entire room was of a grandeur that hadn't been seen since the height of the Baroque period, and outside of a royal palace. Harry couldn't help but think that was appropriate, since the girl on his arm was like a princess to him. This also meant the period dress of the first and second years now fitted right in. An ornamental and exquisitely carved fountain occupied the middle of the dance floor, with all the hall's carvings and gold trimmings being highlighted by 20 magnificent crystal chandeliers. There was more than a glint of humor from the Ravenclaw ghost as she jokingly inquired if the room would do. Harry's answer, though, showed just how much he had picked up from Sirius's lessons. "My lady, I appreciate Hogwarts' attempt to match the beauty of my date. It was a valiant attempt." No living person had ever heard the Grey Lady laugh before. The delightful and almost musical sound had everyone considering they would need a more appropriate name for the Ravenclaw ghost. When Helena smiled, there was nothing grey about the ghost who'd clearly been a great beauty when alive. "We thought the first, second and third years would appreciate the balconies, allowing them to see everything that happens without feeling obliged to dance if they don't want to." This proved a really popular suggestion as the lower years headed for the staircases. Dumbledore was not alone in being surprised at just how much control this second year had over the castle, or how much the Lady Helena had changed. Hannah and Susan had invited Ernie and Justin to be their dates for Hermione's cancelled party. They naturally just continued that arrangement for the ball. Pravati surprised them by arriving on the arm of Blaise Zabini, though Padma made sure there were 2 seats next to her available for her twin and her date. Colin was rather chivalrously about to give up his own place at Harry's table to allow Ginny and Luna to join them when Hogwarts increased the size of their table. Not only was there a place for Colin, there were 2 as yet unoccupied place settings. That puzzle was soon solved by the arrival of Henrika and Sirius. "Do you mind if we sit with you lot for the evening? Downstairs is just so. What in the name of Merlin is that?" His godfather's exclamation had everyone at the table turning to see what had caused this outburst.
Not that every eye wasn't now turned in that direction anyway. Just as he'd expected.
If there was one thing Gilderoy knew how to do, it was make an entrance, and what an entrance. He'd timed it to perfection. Everyone else had arrived, but dinner had yet to be served. He stood there in what Gilderoy considered a heroic pose, allowing everyone to get a good look at him. His black patent leather boots hugged his calves to just below his knees, their heels adding 1.5 inches to his height. Those same boots melted into a pair of purple breeches that had bright red cavalry stripes down the side. They also gave new definition to the phrase tight. The bulge at his groin caused Luna to ask if he wasn't staying for dinner, since he'd brought his own lunchbox. His royal blue bum freezer jacket had more gold braid than a dozen admirals, and he actually wore a leather scabbard containing his wand instead of a sword. His ridiculous ensemble was completed by a short fur-lined cape, jauntily worn over one shoulder. There was no way Gilderoy Lockhart was going to hide his trademark golden locks under any kind of hat. Harry audibly groaned, knowing what was required of him now. He stood to find Hermione right beside him, the grip on his arm saying she was accompanying him. "If he tries to grab my boyfriend again, I'm going to introduce him to my blade." This drew smiles from all around the table. They all knew Hermione was really going down there to drag Harry off the prat if he started anything. They just hoped she let him beat Lockhart up a bit first. Beat up a lot worked for them too. The couple found the headmaster waiting at the bottom of the stairs. Together they walked toward the still posing professor. "Excuse me, Professor Lockhart, I failed to spot your Order of Merlin amongst the rest of the paraphernalia you're currently wearing." Hermione had a closer view than anyone else, but she was sure those in the hall were reaching the same conclusion as she was. Dumbledore wore his award with pride, and effortlessly projected the image of an elder statesman. Harry, on the other hand, looked the epitome of a young warrior. Even as he walked toward Lockhart, you could see he was ready for instant action. Lockhart, on the other hand, had deliberately aimed for a military theme, something again he had no right to. He'd gone for hussar and ended up with bizarre. He looked like someone who'd been kicked out of the Village People for being too outlandish. Hermione wondered if she could get the band to play YMCA. Gilderoy then unveiled his master plan and his award. Headmaster, I was sure you would notice that. When the Merlin Committee were debating my award, it was mentioned that my greatest wish was world peace. They then struck my award especially for me. The defense professor then indicated a gold peace symbol hanging from a scarlet ribbon, a symbol that was recognized even in Goblin society. Hermione had also spotted an I Heart in Y medallion hanging from a piece of ribbon too. While Harry and even Dumbledore were struck dumb by the audacity of the wizard, Hermione's mind went into hyperdrive. She moved her own medallion onto her dress, just above her heart, and a quick sticking charm saw it held there. How silly of me. I forgot to wear my Order of the Aves. First class. The awards committee knew my greatest wish too. A golden crow holding my heart. The second class award is of course silver, and features a sword. Can we assume the committee also knew of your allergy to bronze, and made your third class award out of gold instead? Albus was actually enjoying watching these two take someone else apart for a change. That was until he noticed the glints of silver from above. Miss Granger's actions had set off a chain reaction amongst the first years. It would appear as if every single one of them had brought their badges to the ball, all now wore them on their jackets and dresses like Miss Granger. Devotion like that reminded Albus of another young man, though Tom was in fourth year before he began gathering followers around him. Harry already had first year wrapped up, along with the vast majority of second. With the Weasley twins and the Davies boy, they were making inroads into fourth too. Albus couldn't help but hear the Ravenclaw boy raving about the defense lesson he attended this morning. His claim that he had learned more in those 3 hours than his previous 3 years at Hogwarts was certainly being believed. He almost opened his mouth to say something before deciding to let Lockhart be the one to put his foot in it tonight, and Lockhart duly obliged. Totally missing the sarcasm from Miss Granger, he quickly confirmed her suspicion that he was indeed allergic to bronze. The three walked away, leaving Lockhart thinking that once again he'd fooled everyone. Thanks to Henrika's lessons, the entire student population now knew Lockhart's outrageous claims were a pile of shit. That neither Harry nor the headmaster bowed to Lockhart also indicated that they both knew that too. The only one fooled was the fool himself, Gilderoy Lockhart. Albus sat in this magnificent room and watched as his entire school, excuse the pun, had a ball. None of the staff had been involved in the preparations, nor were they needed to supervise their charges. Jugs of punch and pumpkin juice were on every table, refilling before they had time to empty. The house ghosts patrolled around the tables, chatting with anyone who had the time to talk. After the elves had provided a wonderful meal, the band had turned up and now dancing was the order of the evening. Albus also noticed some couples sitting on the marble edge around the fountain's circular basin, the entire structure acting as a cooling-off area for the dancers. Albus was here tonight purely as a guest, and that's exactly how he felt, a guest in his own school. Losing even a little control would normally have Albus reaching for his wand to rectify the situation, but not tonight. The reason for that was simple. It was Hogwarts herself who was in control here this evening, and doing a magnificent job of it. Horace watched as everyone had fun. He was so depressed. How had 2 Gryffindors and a couple of Ravenclaws managed to destroy a famous wizard's reputation so easily? They also did it in a way that the fool still hadn't realized. Every single person in the hall now knew he was a liar. The head of Slytherin thought he was dealing with a couple of second years and that gaining their confidence would be easy. He hadn't done his homework and gotten savage during his clumsy approach. Albus, of course, hadn't mentioned any of this when he conned him out of retirement and into returning to Britain. Horace was only now beginning to realize just how much he hadn't been told. His only chance now appeared to be somehow gaining the boys' respect, grudging or otherwise. To do that, though, would take every piece of Slytherin cunning he had. Minerva watched her students having a great time and, reputation be damned, she just had to smile. Between her time as a student in the castle and then her teaching years, Minerva had almost half a century of experience inside Hogwarts. In all that time, Minerva could honestly say she'd never seen anything like this. Hogwarts sure knew how to throw a party. Her eyes caught a sight she still didn't believe. A second year dancing with a Vila professor, with both of them laughing and chatting away. That second year being one of her young lions, Mr. Longbottom. Just added to her sense of astonishment. Minerva would bet her pension. She wasn't the only person inside the castle who was continually having to upgrade her opinion of that young wizard. Gilderoy also noticed Henrika dancing with the second year and was considering cutting in, until he recognized who that second year was. He then spied Black dancing with the sword-wielding witch, and Crow soon followed them round with his friend's date as a partner. This just seemed to sum up his evening. He'd been so looking forward to this ball, but it was turning into a personal disaster. He was expecting the girls to flock to him, not scatter in different directions any time he approached. Not only had every witch spurned his advances and offers to dance, most of them had rushed away in the opposite direction before he could even ask them. Hogwarts was turning into a major disappointment. The press didn't even ask to take his picture when they arrived. Harry was back dancing with Hermione as they twirled around the fountain, holding his princess in his arms as they waltzed around this magical setting. This was worth putting up with Lockhart and Dumbledore. This was priceless. Hermione smiled as she asked him about tonight. Do you think this will see Lockhart chased out the castle? I doubt it. That would mean Dumbledore not only admitting he was wrong, but doing something about it. Remember, this was a prank Fred and George played on Lockhart. Looking at it from that angle, it's a fantastic success. The entire castle now knows Gilderoy Lockhart is a liar, and we even got a ball out of it too. When she followed Harry's logic, Hermione had to agree. She also knew the news would be filtering out to homes all over the country. This might not be the knockout blow that finally flattened Lockhart, but it was the first step to destroying his reputation. Unlike Dumbledore, a reputation would appear to be all that Lockhart had. She was reminded of the Emperor's new clothes, and how it was children who solved that puzzle too. The group of friends left the ball together as they headed back to their dorms. Whether it was chivalry or the presence of Harry and Neville, Blaise kissed Parvati on the back of her hand and thanked her for a lovely evening. Colin escorted an almost floating Ginny through the portrait hole after Parvati. Ginny just had the best night of her life, a night that also included a dance with Harry. She was in heaven. Until her brother spoiled it. You traitorous bitch! Why don't you go down to the dungeons where you obviously belong? It was only when Parvati answered that Ginny realized Ron's tirade wasn't aimed at her. Listen, Weasley, who cares what you think? Take your attitude out of my face before I decorate the common room with it. Oh yeah, think Crow is going to come running to save you. He only does that for your sister. Padma had been outside saying goodnight to Neville when she heard the shouting, discovering her sister was involved, saw her head straight into the lion's den. Ron suddenly had double vision with both Patil sisters now in his face. Listen, Weasel, my sister doesn't need anyone to rescue her from the likes of you. We always have each other's backs, and there won't be enough of your bigoted carcass left to decorate this common room with if you forget that. Looking desperately for help, Ron attempted to turn the argument around in his favor. First she dates a Slytherin. Now we have a Ravenclaw in our common room. Is everyone else here okay with this? Neville had of course followed Padma's side and stood squarely behind the twins on this argument. What Parvati does is none of your business, Weasley. She hasn't broken any rules, and you have no authority inside Gryffindor, far less Hogwarts. Well, we can't all be school champions. Is your buddy Crow getting ready to come in here and wave his fancy sword around? Is that what happens next? What happened next was Percy entering the common room. Ron grasped this fortuitous event and treated it almost as if the cavalry had arrived to save him from the circling savages. Percy, not content with dating a Slytherin, she then has a Ravenclaw in our common room. Ron confidently stood back, expecting his brother to now administer the justice he was unable to. Percy looked to Padma for an explanation of her presence here. She didn't take long to provide an answer. Your pret of a brother is probably the only person in the castle who didn't have a great time tonight. He then decided to spread that misery around by screaming at Parvati. I was outside saying goodnight to Neville and wasn't about to let him get away with that. She dated a Slytherin. Ron appeared to think that if he achieved enough volume, then everyone would finally understand the point he was trying to make. Unfortunately, for Ron that is, he chose to shout this in Padma's face from a distance measured in mere inches. As Ron's spittle sprayed over Padma's face, Neville's fist connected with his, dropping Ron onto his ass. Percy's hand gripping his arm stopped Neville taking any further action, apart from removing a hanky and offering it to Padma. Ron, go to bed! But Percy, he just hit me. Surely you're going to do something about that. Had you acted that way to Penny, I would have flattened you if Penny didn't do it first. Go to bed now." As Ron slunk his way up the stairs, Percy turned his attention to the girls. "I must apologize for my brother's behavior. It was Padma who cut him off." "No, you don't, Percy. Apart from your brother Charlie, we've met your entire family. We've liked them all, but Ron sticks out like a sore thumb with his crass behavior. You shouldn't have to apologize for him. He probably doesn't even realize what he's done wrong." "Thanks for that, Neville. I was about to reach for my wand when you flattened him." She then turned her attention to her sister. "Are you okay, Pav? I was perfectly capable of dealing with that situation on my own. I don't need you or anyone else rushing to my rescue." This took the breath from Padma. "But we've always looked out for each other." "Well, you've made it plain that situation has changed. Christmas, summer, and now Halloween. How can we look out for each other when you're never around?" Parvati headed for her own staircase, leaving Neville to escort Padma back outside where the rest of their friends were waiting. Neville's comforting arm was replaced by that of Hermione as Padma found herself now sandwiched between her two friends. "How much of that did you hear?" Hermione's arm tightened around Padma as she answered, "All of it. It looks like Parvati didn't take the news you would be going with us at Halloween as well as you thought. Christmas is nothing more than a break from school for us. Halloween is different. This will be the first one we've ever spent apart. I don't know if I want to go now." Harry tried to help. "Neither Hermione nor I have any experience of siblings, but we have had to work our way around the differences thrown up between us and our families. Trying to look at the situation from different perspectives has helped us." "What would you think or do if the shoe was on the other foot, if it was Parvati who was going with us at Halloween?" This got Padma thinking. "I see what you mean, but this is hard." Hermione confirmed it had been hard for them too, encouraging Padma to continue. "I would like to think I'd be pleased for her. Parvati would look at this weekend as being the lead-up to an offer of betrothal from Neville. That's probably what's got her so mad. She would never understand that Neville and I could just be friends." Hermione had a front-row seat as she watched their two friends begin the journey from friendship to possibly something more. If she could see that, it was a certainty Parvati could too. Padma herself had said that her sister was always the twin who drew the most attention. Watching Padma with Neville must be hard for Parvati to take. Her less popular sister appeared to effortlessly obtain what was Parvati's greatest wish, a boyfriend who had the potential to be so much more. That this was a boy Parvati had previously attempted to ensnare must be particularly rankling. Like the rest of their friends, the smartest witch in their year dismissed the problem as jealousy on Parvati's part. Padma herself had reached the same conclusion. It didn't hurt any less because of that. That morning's profit pleased everyone, except Lockhart. They had led with the headline, "A celebration Merlin would be proud of," accompanied by a picture that showed lots of first and second years posed around the fountain. That his school was shown in such a positive light pleased Dumbledore no end. He was more than happy to bask in the reflected glory this story generated. The way things had been going lately, Albus was happy simply not being publicly berated for something. It made a pleasant change. Harry was also happy. Apart from there being some mention of the Order of Merlin winners in attendance, he didn't feature in the story. 30 or so very happy students had their picture on the front page of the Prophet, and the article promised more pictures from the ball in their sister publication Teen Witch Weekly, which intended to do a full spread on the new fashion sweeping Britain's magical community. Roger was unhappy that he wasn't going to attend the extra defense lessons today. That was until Harry had a private word with him. "Having someone older there certainly helped us, so we're thinking of making it a permanent arrangement. We're also thinking of including Fred and George, but don't know any older students well enough to figure out who else to ask. Penny would be the obvious choice, but that would really mean taking Percy too. I don't know if we're ready to mix it with 6th years just yet." Roger privately thought Harry could mix it with just about anyone, but had a suggestion to make. "What about Cedric Diggory? He's a 4th-year puff, and I'll vouch for him being a good guy. Didn't his father just become the chief warlock?" It was a puzzled Roger who answered that question with one of his own. "Yes. Do you have a problem with that?" "No, but I wouldn't want him thinking that's why we were asking. Harry, you don't even know Cedric. Oh, I see. I'll tell him the truth. It was me who suggested he join us. This got a nod of agreement. I'll need to check with Assistant Ambassador Weasley first, but you can see if he's interested. If nothing else, it gives us a mixture of houses. Roger immediately headed off to the Hufflepuff table for a talk with Cedric, though Bill spotted a potential problem. The minute Harry mentioned the names, I know you don't pay much attention to Quidditch, Harry, but those four are all on their house teams. The chance of them having every Saturday morning free are nil. Bill was right, Quidditch held no interest for Harry, but he did know Roger and the twins played. What about having them join us every Sunday? That would still leave us Saturdays to work on things ourselves. Liking that idea, Bill suggested it was time to put it to the group. He signaled for the twins to come over while Harry did the same with Roger. The fourth-year Ravenclaw brought Cedric along and introduced him to the four friends. Bill then laid out their proposal. You four want extra tuition in defense, and I want to match this lot up against some older opponents. We're proposing to do both every Sunday morning. If you're up for it. The twins agreed at once while Roger had a question. Cedric mentioned Quidditch. Is that why you're offering Sundays? Yes, this lot might not bother with the game, but I knew you four had Quidditch commitments. Both Roger and Cedric confirmed they would be delighted to accept, only to quickly discover what they'd let themselves in for. Okay, we've already wasted 5 minutes standing here blethering. Let's move it. There was no hesitation amongst the four friends. They shot out of the hall, leaving the others to chase after them. That same quartet of second years sat showered and changed at lunch, while a certain four fourth years were conspicuous by their absence. A certain professor noticed this, and the esteem this gained the second years from the other students. It was time to try a different approach. Before they arrived for breakfast on Monday morning, Harry must have denied he was holding a dueling club at least a dozen times to excited questioners. Apparently notices for this club had appeared in all four houses. Padma attempted to look on the bright side. At least they're holding it tonight, and not in direct competition to Crow's Marauders. I think I prefer the Order of the Avis. Harry's suggestion was instantly outvoted by his three friends, and all the first years within hearing range. It seems he was stuck with that name. So, are we going to go along tonight? The other three thought over Neville's question and couldn't come up with any reason not to. Between the ball and now this club, morale in the castle had rarely been higher. Everyone left the Great Hall straight after dinner. There was no dawdling tonight. They understood the hall would need to be set up for the club, and on regaining entry, it certainly looked promising. The house tables had been removed, and a dueling platform now dominated the hall. All that early promise was for naught, though, with the discovery of just who was running this club. Gather round, can everyone see me? Can you all hear me? Excellent. The loud groans that greeted Gilderoy's arrival told the professor he was the only one who thought this situation was excellent. Now Professor Dumbledore has granted me permission to start this little dueling club, to train you all in case you ever need to defend yourselves, as I myself have done on countless occasions. For full details, see my published works. He then rather grandiosely, in a move that must have seen him practicing in front of a mirror for hours, swirled his cape off his shoulders. Deliberately choosing a group of girls, he tossed his cape toward them, only to see it hit the floor as they all moved away from the item that had actually touched Lya Lockhart. Undaunted, the intrepid professor pushed on with the meeting. Now I would like to introduce the professor who has kindly agreed to assist me with this demonstration duel tonight. Professor Slughorn. This was a surprise to just about everyone in the hall. No one knew what Slughorn was like with a wand in his hand. The unanimous consensus, though, was that he couldn't possibly be worse than Lockhart. The blowhard counted down from 3 and then promptly ended up on his back, a simple disarming spell doing the damage. But this was met with loud cheering did more damage to Lockhart than his opponent's curse. He of course claimed to have let the curse through, purely for demonstration purposes, but no one was buying that anymore. Slughorn seemed to take heart from the cheering, not realizing it was more for Lockhart's defeat than the person inflicting it. Their next demonstration duel, the potions professor really went to town. Within seconds, Gilderoy was dressed like a circus clown, complete with red nose and green frizzy hair, while trying his best to perform river dance without music. He was waving his wand around more like a conductor of an orchestra rather than a wizard. Gilderoy would probably have gotten better results from the string section than he achieved trying to cast a counterspell. What was riotously funny at the beginning was now becoming cringeworthy and decidedly unpleasant. There is a fine line between a prank and bullying. Slughorn was leaving that line far behind him. A silencing curse ended Gilderoy's pleas for the spells to be lifted. The defense professor was now entering a clear state of physical distress. Horace was enjoying this, and now for phase 2 of his plan. Oh dear, I can see why there is such a demand for private defense tuition. I just hope tomorrow night's lessons are better than this. The first years were on him in seconds, defending Crow's marauders, Ginny being especially vociferous. Harry used that distraction to cast a finite incantatem at Lockhart, drawing no pleasure from watching the now physically exhausted man collapse to the floor. Slughorn turned his attention to Harry. It would seem your charges are quite impressed with your defense teaching, Centurion. Then again, they don't really have much to compare it with, do they? Hermione was muttering a warning to him that she was speaking in his own language told Harry how serious she thought the situation was. This is screaming setup and making me wonder just whose idea this club was. What do you say, Centurion? Want to show us what you're teaching the first years? Let's have a friendly duel. You're bound to at least last longer than our current defense professor. He's deliberately goading you into fighting him. I just can't figure out why. This might not be a bad idea, Hermione. I really need to get some idea what level I'm at, and he can't really go too far with all these witnesses. Horace wasn't getting the reaction he expected, so goaded. Harry, some more. Do you need your girlfriend's permission to duel? Is that what the problem is? Perhaps I should duel her instead. That might get your attention. He'd been expecting those comments to be accompanied by some derisive laughter, especially from his Slytherins. The entire school, though, had learned, some of them the hard way, that you don't anger Harry. The one sure way to do this was by targeting his girlfriend, Hermione. Harry, though, was very calm as he answered the head of Slytherin. You have been misinformed, Professor. I don't teach the marauders how to duel, I teach them how to fight. If you wish to fight a centurion, I just happen to know one who will accommodate you. Harry might be calm, but Hermione was nervous enough for the both of them. Don't mess about, Harry, end it quickly. Horace was pleased his plan had worked. He needed to show he was so much more than the image the students now had of him. Dumping the boy who lived onto his arse would be his first step on the road to regaining some of the respect he had lost. Certainly, Centurion, won't you join me up here? As I said, Professor, I don't duel. We'll ward off an area down here and the fight only finishes when someone is bleeding. Harry handed a stone to both Neville and Padma before kissing Hermione and giving her a third. They then moved everyone back to clear a large space on the floor. Harry moved Luna, Ginny and Colin up onto the dueling stage so they could see more clearly, a move that was soon copied by most of the lower school. When they had a large enough area cleared, they each placed a stone at a corner and activated them. Harry kicked off his shoes and opened his shirt. Horace, though, was already playing mind games. Armor for a friendly duel, surely not. This is a fight, Professor, and there is nothing friendly about one of them. I can no more leave my armor off than you can discard all the years of experience you have over me. Like your experience, my armor is a part of me. Don't forget, you agreed to fight a centurion. I told you I am a centurion first, and a Hogwarts student second. Harry had his shield and knife ready before he drew his sword. Count us off, Hermione. Horace was now faced with this golden warrior. All trace of the boy he thought he was dueling seemed to vanish when that magnificent armor activated. He was beginning to suspect this might not be as easy as he thought when the girl set them off. First blood, fight. Harry's first stunner reverberated off the shield that Horace had hastily erected. That shield, though, was no protection from a blade. In a move that was almost as quick as his stunner, Harry was on Slughorn and sliced a chunk out of his robe. The professor let out a yelp of surprise before managing to get a combination of spells off. They didn't do any good. Crow was so fast, dodging or deflecting every single one before that sword flashed and another chunk of his robes hit the floor. Horace felt as if he was fighting for his life here, yet really couldn't use any of his heavier curses against a 12-year-old boy, at least not with so many people watching. The third time Crow's blade had cut through his robes, the experienced jeweler knew this boy could finish the fight any time he wanted. This had changed from an opportunity for Horace to gain some respect to a training exercise for Crow that could not be allowed to continue. He'd bided his time and was now ready. A starburst charm should momentarily blind everyone in the hall, allowing Horace to cast the necessary spells to put Crow down. He clamped his eyes tight as the starburst illuminated the entire hall, but Horace never got time to put the rest of his plan into operation. When Hermione's vision returned, she saw a knackered Harry leaning on his sword and no sign of Slughorn. She deactivated her corner and rushed to him, throwing her arms around her mate to confirm he was okay. "I thought I said not to mess about. He nearly had you on a few occasions. I wouldn't have learned anything, ending it in seconds, and he was sticking to spells that wouldn't really hurt me." Padma and Neville had also collapsed their corners and joined the couple. It was Padma, of course, who just had to ask the question. "So, what did you learn?" "Not to mess about." "Ouch. No need to get violent, ladies." Harry had just received a punch on each arm from both girls. Neville, though, had a different concern. Harry, where's Slughorn?" Harry looked up and his three friends were the first to burst into laughter as they followed his line of sight. They certainly weren't the last. Slughorn was dangling from the ceiling of the great hall, robes ripped to shreds and entrapped in a web. Everyone, though, could easily read his expression of disbelief as he cradled his bleeding wand hand. "I barely scratched him. I wonder if old Sluggy is afraid of heights." Roger had made some pretty outrageous claims about the defense classes these four attended at the weekend. Not one Ravenclaw doubted his word now. Cedric had also stated in Hufflepuff that any of the four would kick his ass in a fight, and Harry regularly fought the other three, all at the same time. Susan and Hannah's claims that Harry and Hermione practiced every day, even on holiday, had also been taken with a pound of salt. These too were now being believed. Even the first-year Gryffindors knew not to believe a word. Fred and George said their house did know a fighter when they saw one, though, and Harry was undoubtedly a fighter. The Slytherins didn't know what to think. Their head of house had deliberately goaded Crow into a fight and then lost. Anyone who'd seen him use either of his blades knew Harry could have cut Slughorn with any of those strokes that sliced through his robes. This seemed to send a mixed message. There was certainly no love lost between Crow and Lockhart. It didn't escape their notice, though, that Harry had just dished out the same treatment their head of house gave Lockhart earlier. One thing was for sure, no one would openly challenge Crow after that display. The prefects had to step in and stop the Great Hall from descending into chaos. With Lockhart now sleeping from exhaustion, he snored too, and Slughorn hanging from the ceiling, they were forced to take charge. The ruckus Harry's victory had started was bound to attract staff attention, with McGonagall and Flitwick soon arriving and demanding some answers. There was no shortage of people willing to supply those answers, and soon McGonagall had only one question for Harry. "Centurion, how long do you intend to leave Professor Slughorn up there?" Professor Slughorn didn't seem in any hurry to remove his Tarantallegra from Professor Lockhart. He left him dancing, so I see no reason not to leave the good professor dangling. "Excuse us, Professor, but it's been a long and tiring day, with tomorrow probably being longer still since we have our defense club. I'm heading off to bed now." They walked out of the Great Hall, leaving both professors to restore order, and also deal with a swinging Slughorn and snoring Lockhart. Neville and Hermione were practically carrying Harry by the time they reached Ravenclaw Tower. Good nights were said as Neville then escorted Ginny and Colin back to their own dorm. Luna found herself sitting with moonlight at Harry's feet. Padma and Hermione had plonked in between them on a sofa. Luna was delighted her friends trusted her enough to discuss what was going on in front of her. "I've never used my armor to enhance my speed for so long before. It really drained me. I think it's something that I might need to build up some endurance to." Padma agreed with his assessment. Magic will always extract a price. Why didn't you end it sooner, though? It didn't really hit me until the fight was over. That's the scary part. If I had continued, would I have just dropped from exhaustion? Harry Crow, you will not be practicing that. I think I need to, Hermione. It could prove vital in a fight. He could see the scared look in her eyes and made a concession. I promise I won't attempt it without supervision and have at least one healer present. Hermione could see this was something he would need to get a handle on. That Harry was going to do it as responsibly as possible was really the best she could ask for. They got Harry up the stairs before he fell asleep on the sofa. Hermione did offer to take a morning off from their exercises, but Harry wouldn't hear of it. A quick kiss, good night, and he collapsed on top of the bed. Shouldn't we undress him? Padma Patil, get your thoughts off my Harry. I'm throwing a cover on him that will keep him warm until morning. Padma was in full teasing mode now. You could stay with him, no one would know. Hermione was pleased to see her friend returning to something like her normal self. Padma's relationship with her sister could currently be described at best as strained. That's precisely why I won't be staying. When I spend the night with Harry, I at least like him to know I'm there. Padme had no answer to that, so both witches headed back down to the common room, stopping to watch as Luna attempted to teach Moonlight how to play hide and seek. Harry was almost back to normal next morning, though the couple did knock a few miles off their run. At breakfast, Harry found himself receiving vicious glares from the Hogwarts potions professor. It was almost as if something he'd been missing had returned. He much preferred the glares to the covetous stares Slughorn normally aimed at him. Breakfast also saw Harry face a barrage of questions, and even more requests for defense tutoring. He held up his hand to gain some quiet to be allowed a chance to answer. First off, Slughorn was holding back. He couldn't really go full power against a second-year student. In a real fight, I think you would see a different approach. This set the Ravenclaws thinking, though Harry knew they wouldn't like the next part. Working out lesson plans for the first years is taking nearly as long as teaching them, and they are all at the same level. To try and run another class couldn't fail, but have an impact on our own studies. I'm sorry, but it has to be a no to more defense lessons. Roger and the other three are being tutored by Assistant Ambassador Weasley, and again increasing the size of that class would seriously cut into our lesson. The one thing about Ravenclaws was that they could see the logic behind Harry's reasoning. None of them would endanger their own studying or grades to tutor others. They may understand Harry's reasoning, but that didn't mean they had to like his decision. They had defense after lunch, and once more the four stayed behind to run over their plans for tonight's defense club. Bill, though, was more interested in Harry's exhaustion. We all noticed you were knackered after fighting Master Sharpshard, but you were wounded too. This is something your father needs to hear about, and I really do think we need to find your limits. Bill headed Hermione's objections off with simple logic. It's much safer to discover what those limits are under test conditions than in a battle. None of them could really argue with that. By the time they were due to meet Crow's Marauders, Harry's exhaustion was nothing more than a memory, and the four friends were all raring to go. You all did really well last week, but tonight we're going to change it up a level. We noticed that some people weren't concentrating on their evasion, prepared to take a hit to get their own spell off. That is never the way to behave in a fight. The curse that you let hit might be the last thing you'll ever feel. Harry let the seriousness of this sink in before continuing. Because of this, we're going to learn a new spell tonight. It's called a stinging hex. Any idea why? Ginny was first with an answer. She'd seen her mum fire it at the twins for years, usually as they were running away from the mayhem they just created. That's because it stings when you get hit with it. Ginny's exactly right. It does sting people, but it won't do you any harm other than that. The secret will be not to let it hit you, and we want you to learn to treat all spells cast at you in the same manner. After having learned to cast the blob spell, no one had any trouble mastering the stinging hex. Then the real lesson began. Harry had asked the room for some protective headgear. A stinging curse to the face was not something they wanted any of the first years to experience. You are now going to take part in an exercise the four of us do all the time. Same teams as last week. One will be casting the stinging hex while the other will be doing their best to evade. There will be a strict time limit of 1 minute when we call time. You'd better stop casting. If you get hit, lie down on the floor and you will not be targeted again. There was a much more serious atmosphere about the lesson tonight. Even the ones doing the casting knew it would be their turn to evade next. Harry and Neville kept their eyes on the casting team, while Hermione, Padma and Henrika looked after those evaders who'd been hit. There was no cheering from the sidelines this time. Everyone was too busy watching for ideas that would see them come out of this without being stung. Hermione made sure to be the one who led Colin to the sidelines after his team's minute was up. He would probably have looked upon Padma having her arm around his shoulders as a price worth paying for taking a stinging hex. Once each team had their turn at both exercises, Harry reintroduced the format they had used last week, only this time using stinging hexes. All were pleased to see the battles this time were a lot more cagey. No one wanted to rush into a brace of stinging hexes. At the end of the lesson they had all the marauders sit in a large circle, and the elves provided comforting mugs of hot chocolate for each of them. Harry then spoke to the class. Up until tonight we've tried to make these lessons fun. The downside of that approach was some of you were treating it all as a game. I hope you now know it's not. We will still try and have some fun, but you have to understand that learning to defend yourselves is a very serious business. You are witches and wizards. A wand in your hand gives you the power to perform magic. The point of this club is to teach you how to do that properly and responsibly. We realized tonight might be a bit of a shock to the system, and hope you'll still be back next week. They had worried that tonight's approach might scare a few of them off. Luna, though, seemed to speak for all of them. Why wouldn't we come back next week? This is stuff we need to learn, and who else is going to teach us it? Professor Lockhart, you are giving up your evening for us, and I know you'll be studying for Master Pitsley's class the minute you get back to our common room. I think what I'm trying to say is thanks to all of you. They weren't sure who started clapping, but soon all the first years were applauding their 4 tutors and staff sponsor. The first years had taken to wearing their Crow's Marauders badges on their robes, and Harry couldn't help but feel proud of what they were doing here. It was fear rather than pride that saw Lucius shoot up into a sitting position in bed. The nightmare had left him sweating. Draco and Pansy had been in the picture that appeared on the Prophet's front page, just 2 of many purebloods who were clearly having a good time. Lucius was the only person who knew that those good times were going to come to a crashing halt, and that the pictures he saw in his nightmare were of dead pureblood children. That Draco's face was amongst those dead children was the reason for his nightmare. That and his inability to do anything about the situation. His son was just going to have to be left to take his chances, along with the rest of Hogwarts.